Alright, hello everyone. It's Claire here, and it's been a while since I've made some content, but it's been a lot longer than a while since I originally said I would make this content. Um, in Season 30 of RD2L, people were officially allowed to play multiple divisions. Interdiv was completely killed off, and in that season I played all four divs. Well, I guess all four playable divs, since you can't really do two Sunday ones. And I said I would make a tier list of my different teammates. I believe I was just going to include 8012 as well. I was playing like 5 days a week that season. Really whack stuff. But anyway, I said that, and then I never did it. And the next season, I'm like, oh, I'll do it this season, but I'll just like add on season 31, and then I didn't do it again. And I've continued to do this repeatedly until season 35, where I actually made this whatever it is spreadsheet little tier list thing, I guess. I'm like, all right, I'm about to do it, and I was kind of sick and I had a hoarse throat, so I waited it out a while, and that was like a month ago now. So yeah, I've been putting this off for a very long time, but I'm finally here, and I'm making a tier list of every player I've played with in RD2L during this sort of, I guess, new multi-div era. Um, and yeah, and so to start things off, just to lay a couple uh, rules, I guess, before people skip ahead to their section. As I assume the people that are going to watch this. Um, I am going to rank people based on how much I'd want to play another season of RD12 with them. And just that, some players are obviously a little more complicated and nuanced. I'm not rating people based on how good I think they are, or how good I think they are compared to their badge, or like how good of a person I think they are, or anything like that. It's simply just how much do I want to play. Like, if I had the chance to play RD12 with them again, how much would I want to do that based on my experience with them in the season I played with them in? Um, so yeah, I also have some little highlighting going on here, mostly for my own sake, but just to explain. The yellow is people that I played multiple seasons with within these 6 seasons. The orange is people that I had played multiple seasons with, but the last season I played with them was from an older season. Um, yeah, I'm trying to remember what even was my previous season with Shadow Ace. Maybe I highlighted him because I played 8012 with him. Um, Chase Zombies should be highlighted too. But anyway, yeah. But anyway, people that I played other teams with, and then the blue names are like friend stackers, I guess. People that I've been playing with for years. I'm obviously not gonna rank them in the same way that I'm ranking anyone else, because my experience and my desire to play with them is not really based off this brief season that I played with them, or multiple seasons in most cases, but more off a longer relationship. They're pretty much all going to be S plus tier, I guess. Um, but yeah, um, so I didn't include season 29, even though I did actually play multiple seasons. Season 29, me, Burr Hobbit, and EmoCast all got to play both Tuesday and Sunday. I guess we'd already been talking about like allowing people to play multiple divs. And I kind of convinced Treebeard to let me do 2 divs ahead of time before we like officially opened it up, and Burr Hobbit and EmoCast got in on that as well. I think because they noticed I had 2 signups. I think I signed up on a Smurf for Tuesday, and I was like admin at the time, so I was just edited it on the draft sheet later. Because you like physically couldn't sign up for multiple divs on the site. Anyway, they figured it out and did the same thing. So I decided not to include it because I did actually do a team review for season 29, at least for the Tuesday team that I won with. I don't think I bothered with the Sunday team. Um, but I guess I do want to just briefly talk about that season 29 Tuesday team again, because I think that did change my thought process a lot on RD2L. There's like been a couple seasons that have really been impactful, I guess, on how I want and how I can what I consider a good team to be and what I look for in players. And season 29 was definitely one of those. Um, and going into season 30 in particular, which was the season I was going to originally talk about, I was definitely comparing my players to that season 29 Tuesday team a lot. Because the season 29 Tuesday team, I had Burr Hobbit carry, I had Potatoes mid. I was off lane with Gaff support, and my safe lane support was Stonks, I believe. Yeah. And I think that team, we kind of had like a kind of a okay start. That then kind of spiraled into the playoffs of feeling like, okay, it almost feels like if we play our game, we just can't lose. And there were kind of some typical things where like we did gain a lot of MMR. It was the season before Glicko, so I was like 3.8 at draft and like 5.4 by end of season. Potatoes was legend at draft and divine by end of season. Burrow Hobbit and Stonks are just divine the whole way through, and then I think Gaff went from ancient to divine as well. So we ended up with like a 5 divine team, which is like a very typical RD12 thing, where a team that gains a ton of MMR wins. Um, but I do also think there are some pretty significant things in like how the team worked together. One of those is that Burrow Hobbit carry. I've like decided was like the perfect way to have an RD12 carry. Um, they're above the average MMR. They're gonna go hit creeps and get their timings, and then they're gonna join the team. And that's pretty much what I've been looking for in my carry every season since then. Is like I need them to be at least average, or ideally a bit above average. And I want them just to be able to reliably farm and get their timings, and then join the rest of the team. Um, and this is kind of basic carry shit, but I feel like at least in the recent patches, it's been like so significant to have a carry you can really rely on. Has a decent hero pool and just does the carry shit. And then Potatoes was like an absolute crazy person in the mid lane, super aggressive. Which I mean, I don't necessarily need, but I think you do want someone that's going to be like leading the team and being aggro. I then, as the offlaner, played a little bit more greedy. Sometimes I join Potatoes, sometimes I just hit creeps. Um, and then I had Gaff, who was like a pretty puddly player, so we pick his hero quite early. And then on the other hand, I had Stonks as the other support, who has a mostly endless hero pool. And I think that was really useful for drafting, being like, okay, like me, Gaff, and Potatoes were a little bit puddly, so we'd pick our heroes, and that was like the stable heroes that the teams were built around. And then we would have Burrow Hobbit and Stonks to kind of fill in the gaps with the later picks. So that kind of balance of players that have useful puddles and other players that have wider pools to respond to things is also, I think, a really nice balance to have. So there's just a lot of things where it's very balanced. Where a Hobbit would farm, Potatoes would hurl himself into the enemy T4s and make space, or whatever, and just a lot of that shit. So anyway, I just wanted to yap about that team again. But let's get into these players, shall we? I don't think I'm gonna start with the E2 team because it's a little bit. That one's the spicier one. I'm actually gonna, I think, start with the PSD Sun team. At the beginning of the season, I only signed up for 2 divs. I signed up for Wednesday and Tuesday, like a reasonable person, and then I proceeded to FA my way onto these other 2 teams. So this Vuvu team had, oh gosh, what's their name? I've forgotten their name. That's a little bit embarrassing. It had one of the, Romney ZooQ Canadian stacker friends, and I cannot believe I've forgotten their name, but anyway, sorry. But they played and they dropped out pretty early for personal reasons. And I offered to step in because I was at the time playing off lane, which was the role they played, and I was like only a bit lower than them in MMR, I believe. Um, and so yeah, anyway. And this team was, well, another thing to note with this season is that I usually captain, and for this entire season 30, all 4 of these teams I was not captaining. So this was Vuvu captain, and because I came in late, this was a team where I really just kind of sat back and let things happen, just tried to play my own game. Um, 2 very strong supports in Vuvu, Awful Waffle. Honestly, this team really increased my opinion on Vuvu a lot, at least as a player. I joke about him feeding, because he does feed a lot, but I do actually think he was very impactful on this team. Very good. Um, and so I guess we'll start with the 2 supports here. Vuvu, and this is where things get a little weird with would I want to play on a team with them again. For Vuvu, at this point in time, I probably would have been pretty okay with playing with him again. I think he was a surprisingly okay support um, for his MMR, and he was very easy to get along with. That being said, at this point in time, when I'm making this tier list, and for the most part, if I can base this on current day, I will. Vuvu does not really play Dota anymore, um, and that's a little bit scary because I don't I do think the tendency to feed and be overly sacrificial looks a lot worse when you don't know what you're doing and you're out of touch with the game. Even though I think he was honestly a lot better than people give him credit for. We'll put him in we'll put him in C tier honestly, only because he's like super retired. All right, an awful waffle. I did pick him again later. I think he's a fairly quiet player, better at P5 than P4. Um, which is I think I ended up picking him for P4 later. Although I think he can do both just fine. Has a decent hero pool, very reliable, doesn't say much. He's kind of like a Stonks from somewhere else. So honestly, pretty solid. We'll put him on A. The two cores I think were probably the more interesting players. Brinks was interesting because they were very aggressive shot caller, a mid player, very aggressive shot caller. I liked the way they tried to lead the game quite a lot, actually. They just kept shit going, moving on the map. Um, so I did quite like their shot calling. I mean, it definitely wasn't perfect. But the one big drawback about Brinks, at least at the time, and I don't think it's changed a lot, is that he was super puddly. You banned a couple heroes and was on thin ice. And in the playoffs, I actually remember being quite annoyed because we picked him a couple heroes that seemed good for the game, and he didn't do super great on them. And then I looked at his Dota buff after, and I realized he just didn't play these heroes at all. Like, it was Odie and Necro, I want to say, were the heroes. And I don't remember exactly what he did. I think like there's something about the Necro build that was just like, what the fuck is this guy doing? And then I went and looked it up after. I'm like, oh, he has almost no games on these heroes and a terrible win rate. Why did we pick them in these heroes? We should have just been like first picking him, one of the small handful of heroes he could play. And I think that did annoy me a bit because I thought this team had potential. And I felt like Vuvu maybe should have put in more effort to knowing what his players could and couldn't play. But whatever. So very interesting player. I think having as small of a hero pool as he had, it was like literally just Invoker Axe, which aren't even both really mid laners, was definitely a bit crippling. And I know he's expanded his pool since then, but I also know he's gone up in MMR. And I don't know if adding like just Shadow Shaman for like an immortal player now. I think he was ancient at the time, and I think he's immortal now. Um, I so I think in terms of like a value pick, I would be a little scared of playing with him again because I don't know if I would consider him to be worth the cost I have to put into him. But I do think he was pretty easy to get on with, and I did like his shot calling quite a bit. I guess I also play mid now, so that would be a problem, but I'm not gonna factor that into this, I guess. I'll pretend that I still play any role. I'll give him another B. I think he really had some ups and downs. Not bad, not perfect. And then Newbie Cakes, I won't rank until I've talked about my P Wednesday team, but yeah, Newbie Cakes I thought was a surprisingly okay carry. Newbie Cakes was the lowest number player on the team, quite a lot below div average. Not the Burr Hobbit type I was looking for at all. Um, But honestly, they did okay. They had a couple heroes that I think they did well on. I do think they maybe talked a bit too much, and they would definitely get flustered. Like on this team, Brinks and Newbie Cakes were the two lowest armor players, and it felt like they were also the ones that were talking and calling all the shots, which kind of makes sense because as a mid player, Brinks is in a good position to do that, and I think he did a pretty good job of it. And as a P1 player, realistically, at some point, you need to be the shot caller. Once you get your items and you go into that mid to late game, I think the P1 should absolutely be shot calling, and that was another thing Bear Hobbit did very well. Um, and having an Archon who I think got a little flustered and maybe didn't have the best foundation of like game knowledge was a little rough at times. But he was okay. He was okay enough that I would eventually pick him again in another season, but we'll talk about that season later. Because to be honest, I think the season 35 lowered my opinion of him a bit. Um, but yeah, so we'll get to that. But anyway, that's this team done. I should add a check marks or something. But yeah. Let's move on to PST Wednesday. Keep going through the PSTs. This team was a disaster. This was Zombie Expert drafting. He picked Doomcow for mid, me for offlane. No, me for P4. Yeah, me for P4, Fiery Snake for P1, and Adam is P5. And I really I've played with Fiery Snake before this even. And he's a lot of fun. and Adam is a friend stacker. Although I think at the time I didn't actually have many games. I only had like 40 games with Adam. I still don't have a ton of games with Adam, maybe 100. But we've been in like the same discords talking forever, so it was fun to finally be on a team with him. And then Doomcow, who I admittedly don't get on with super well. Um, I yeah. Uh, and this team perhaps highlighted that I think that the not getting on with Doomcow is a lot less petty than I originally thought. Like I kind of just joked, like, oh, I just think the stuff he says in Discord is stupid sometimes. And I don't really dislike him. But I guess we'll start talking about it with Doomcow. But I honestly on this team, it was like, holy fuck, this guy's stupid. I really got very annoyed at Doomcow. Doomcow, I think, filled the drafting and shot calling on this team. He definitely did a lot of shot calling in game. I want to say he drafted for us. I think I tried not to draft at all this season. I didn't succeed, but I did try. So I want to say it was Doomcow drafting, and I just didn't agree with a lot of the shit that went down. I don't remember a lot of specific examples at this point because it has been 2 or so years, but I do remember very specifically he was a big believer in Dazzle Mid. It was like right around the time it was getting popular. It was a good hero. It was like the peak Mocha Dazzle days, if I recall correctly. But he just wasn't very good at it, and he was very insistent on picking it. I remember he picked it, lost lane with it. It looked awful. I was like, surely we're not going to pick this again. And then I want to say the very next game in the same series, or maybe it was just the next week, he picked it again. And it looked bad again. I'm like, why are you picking this? This is like so cheesy, and you clearly can't play it. Like, why do you keep trying? And there was shit like that. And there was in-game shot calling as well that we just don't see eye to eye. I am shit. I'm kind of shit talking him, but part of it is just like I don't think he's like objectively the worst. I think a lot of it is that we just disagree on shit. I think he is inherently very cheesy. Like his best heroes historically have been like PL, Lone Druid. Those are not heroes that interact with the game in a super normal way. It's a lot of like just hoping to have good matchups and split pushing, which he's very big on. Um, yeah, and I think his laning has probably always been weak for Zemmar, and I think this team really showed that in the mid lane. And I do kind of get why. Doomcow, I think, has gone through a fair few positions over the years. He was a P1 player when he first joined. I think he had an offlane stint. Then he was swapping between mid and P1. And as someone that has swapped lanes a lot and is now kind of settling on mid, playing mid when you've been playing a lot of roles and haven't just been spamming like 5 straight years of mid 1v1 gameplay is laning is hard, like so much more so than side laning. So he gets some sympathy for me there, but yeah, I think Doomcow's honestly, I would never want to play with him again. I think he's really bad for his rank, and I just do not disagree with the way he sees and views Dota. Um, and I honestly put most of the blame of this team on him. At the end of the season, he was really irritated at Fiery Snake. Um, I Fiery Snake was definitely memeing a lot during the season with his like blogger posts and flaming Doomcow. And Doomcow understandably didn't really like that, but he also put a lot of the blame on Fiery's gameplay, I think, and I think that was unfair because I think Fiery Snake was playing way better than him. And we'll talk about Fiery Snake more on P Wednesday, but Fiery Snake is a carry. He doesn't talk a lot in game. Um, really, he's a pretty reliable carry. He gets his farm. He has a nice little hero pool. He really doesn't talk much in game, which I think was maybe part of Doomcow's issue with him, and I do think is a major flaw as a P1. The Burrow Hobbit ideal P1 I was looking for would shot call in the late game, which Fiery Snake didn't do. But I think he did okay this season. He was laning with Adam, who is normally a mid player playing support. Adam support's like fine. Like I think Adam for his MMR is pretty decent mid. I think in these kind of leagues in particular, he can feel very value because he's got a very robust little hero pool, like 5 to 6 heroes, most of which can be picked pretty early, that you can work with, and he plays them pretty well, and he knows how to play with a team because he plays a lot of 5 stack, and he's just pretty value. As a support, a lot of that value goes away, and his hero pool gets a lot weirder because he doesn't regularly play support. He's just kind of YOLOing shit. I think we picked him a lot of Treant this season. I guess the hero we decided worked well for him. And so he was fine. He's a friend stacker. And if you ignore the fact that we kind of currently play the same role, it's obviously an easy S plus because he's a pal. But yeah, Adam, he's very chill guy. I think even when games got a little stressful, he was always very high spirits, which is good. I think if instead of Adam we had a P5 that was kind of a downer, this team could have like completely imploded because I think there are definitely times where tensions were a little bit high, maybe. Um, and then Zombie Expert. Zombie Expert, I had actually played with him before on 8012, which is why I highlighted this. It may have actually been, yeah, I guess it was like the season before this because RD12 and AD12 seasons kind of line up. And my opinion on him is basically the same on both those teams. I think he's a very good player. Obviously, right now he's like what, top 500 or top 1,000 at least. And he's a very good player, but he's a very very pubby player. I think he's one of these guys that you can you can tell what skills they have that got them their MMR, and you can also recognize that those skills don't necessarily translate super well to RD12. I think the ideal zombie expert game is he's playing a hero that he's comfortable on, that can snowball, that he wins his lane, and then he proceeds to snowball and just get as many kills as possible, and then hopefully his team wins the game off of him killing everyone. I think his weakness was like macro gameplay, and definitely shot calling wasn't really much of a shot caller. So between him and Fiery Snake, both not like Fiery Snake not really talking at all, and him not shot calling a lot, it was a lot of Doomcow shot calling um, on this team, which I don't think was great. Maybe I did too. Maybe I'm underestimating how much I tried to shot call since I was on P4. But I like remember one time where I'm like, "Hey, we need to get the side of map for Roche or Torm or something," and like so I was like, "Oh yeah, okay." And I'm trying to remember exactly what happened now. But I remember it was like in my head like the peak zombie issue where it felt like it was really really obvious that we needed to be going to contest this objective because they were obviously going to be there, and we all showed up, and he kind of showed up late because he wasn't, I guess, as what's the word I'm looking for? It wasn't like urgent to him, and we totally like lost the fight because of it. And I remember thinking that was just like such a like, why is he on the opposite side of the map at all? He should know better. He's like our immortal. I don't know if he was immortal. I think he was immortal at the time. Um, so yeah, I think Zombie Expert's a little bit hit or miss for his rank. He really does just want a solo carry. At least that was my experience back then. But honestly, I do like zombies a lot. Like as much as I'm kind of flaming him a bit here for I don't know, not being very strategically minded. I think he's pretty chill. I think I probably put him with Awful Waffle, where I don't think he's necessarily like would be like my number one pick for offlane, but I think he'd be a cool guy to play with again. Yeah. All right, now we get on to the problem teams. Now we get on to the teams that uh kind of made me want to make this playlist, this tier list in the first place, because the thing that's really boring with RD2L reviews is that usually it's just me picking my friends and I'm overall positive because I drafted the team, and even if I didn't like one of the guys by the end of it, like I drafted them. So it's really not cool for me to come shit talk and be like, yeah, these are my three friends, these were great. This was the fourth rando, I didn't like him. Or I didn't work well with him. Which is just kind of shitty. But the fact that this season I was getting drafted by other people and I had multiple players that were interesting to play with, is why I wanted to do this to begin with. And it was actually the EST Monday team that I think that really got me thinking. Because the E2 team I felt like should have been worse on paper. Like this should have been the team that had players like Zemo and Nos that maybe had a bit of a reputation that should have been like the D tier players. But I was like, by the end of the season, I'm like, Snow is my only D tier player. Um, I guess that isn't true because I put Doomcow down here too. But at the time, I was like, my only obvious pick for D tier is Snow. So I guess we'll talk about EST Monday real quick. Yeah. EST Monday is a division that I used to play in back when Seal existed, and haven't really played in since, and it's changed drastically since then. And I think this was my first time returning there as an FA because I never wanted to play it like instead of Sunday or instead of Tuesday. But now I can do both. I joined as an FA. I didn't know many of the people on this team. I knew Styles from EST Sunday, and I think I knew of Snow, but I never played with Styles. We played Gosh, what was it? I think I played with her on a mini or a tiny. So not like, yeah, I think it was a tiny tournament. So like a one weekend tournament. So I didn't know them super well, but that was like, I thought they were chill. So that was like the one person I knew. Then I didn't know 12 Bricks to Sage at all or Werewood at all. And the player I replaced, I think at this time I was like somehow Divine 4, maybe Divine 5, and I replaced an Immortal P1 player because I wanted to play P1. I enjoy P1 and I like playing it from time to time. And every time I try and draft an RD12 team around that, it's awful because I'm not very good at it. So I agreed to replace their Immortal player as like a Divine, like 500 MR lower that can't actually play P1, which was a bit of a dick move to be honest. But I did it anyway, and the first two games went really, really badly. For multiple reasons. I do think there was some definite issues with this team, but I think the fact, I should just say my P1 performance was not helping. And so Weirwood knew Adam for some reason. I think they had a mutual friend in Tomahawk or something. Um, and Adam told Weirwood that I was a P4 player and like more of a captain, which is true at the time. Both were true. So Weir was like, "Hey, do you mind playing P4 and captaining, and we'll give 12 bricks P1?" And I agreed. And the team honestly did pretty well after that. Um, we didn't like win or anything, but I think we evened up our score line. We ended like 8-8 maybe, and then lost in playoffs. So it was like an okay season. But let's go over these players real quick. Weirwood was the captain. I don't actually have much to say on Weirwood. I think he was definitely a little bit negative, a little emo. Um, and there was a lot of emo going around, which wasn't great. On his own, I think he was fine. Like I said, maybe a little bit negative. Maybe not the best player on earth, like a legend support. Um, but they were fine. They were chill. They can go with Brinks in B tier. Um, and then Styles, like I said, I already knew, and she was cool. Also, very emo. When games would go badly, Styles completely shut down, and just like it was just over. Like there was at least one game where I think me, Stone, Styles all shut down by like 10 minutes, and we were just like slowly farming till we lost. And so that's obviously not a good thing, but I mean, I've had worse. And I guess for that, I probably will say C tier over B tier. Um, this feels a little mean because fellow Taylor Swift fan is obviously a pretty big W. And honestly, the only reason I really remembered them from the mini at all, I think, was the Taylor Swift thing. Um, yeah, as a teammate, and I will say, when she was completely like shutting down, they were, I think, a good teammate. They were vocal, with the mid calls a lot. Well, I think it's probably the same as Brinks, where there's some drawbacks, but overall, like a solid mid player. That maybe just when games went badly, it just they kind of imploded. But other than that, okay. 12 Picks to Sage, I think, was definitely my favorite player on this team. They were my P5 player for the first two series where I played P1, and they weren't a very good P5. They really only played Witch Doctor. They didn't really know how to lane, and their Witch Doctor gameplay really just was sitting back and trying to get good death wards. And they did have some insane. I don't remember if they were game-winning death wards or if they were just almost game-winning death wards, but they were like definitely the highest impact on those death wards. But I was definitely just a little annoyed that it's like, okay, my P5 really is either going to kill everyone with a death ward or do absolutely nothing, and there was just no in between. But part of the reason for that is that 12 Bricks was more of a P1 player. Um, and when they played P1, I was pleasantly surprised because I believe they're immortal now, but at the time I played with them, they were like Ancient 2. And I don't think they even played that much based on their like account history, or like activity history or whatever it's called, account activity. Um, but like they honestly were fine. They had a couple heroes they were pretty decent at. I think Troll was one of them, which is like one of my favorite heroes as well. They were like the one positive player too, which really helped shine through on a team where three out of my four teammates were kind of emo. Um, they were positive, and I thought they had surprisingly good shot calling for their rank at the time. They were like very solid, I think. Um, And yeah, and so he's probably like I probably have a higher opinion of them just because relative to the rest of the team, they seem so good, so positive, I guess. But I honestly think this is was an S tier teammate, and the fact that they're immortal now, which means that they even better fit my desire of P1s being like above the average. I'd totally play with 12 bricks again if given the chance. I think they were fun. And then we get on to Snow. Stuff. The person who was like the fucking I was like, oh, it's D tier teammate. I should make a tier list and put them D tier. Um, yeah, it was kind of interesting. They were the highest MMR player on this team. I think after I FA'd in, I think they were second highest before that. Um, and they're an offlaner, and I just they were like okay at the game, but I think they vastly overestimated themselves, which is part of what annoyed me. They were kind of grumpy. I would say more grumpy than emo. Like Styles and Weirwood were Weirwood. Um, where they would kind of they wanted late pick. They would insist on a weird hero. It'd never be like a Centaur, a Sand King, or some basic initiating hero. They always wanted like an NP or I guess a Mag was like the closest thing to a basic initiator. And then it seemed like they didn't play it very well. Was the thing that annoyed me. Like they really wanted to. It felt like they always wanted to be on a hero that had the potential to solo carry, but they couldn't really solo carry. And when things got bad, they would start blaming other people, usually Weirwood and maybe 12 bricks, the lower MAR players, basically. Which I think is just a really, really bad mentality to have in RD2L. And I honestly think with Snow, I didn't hate Snow. I I do think like in a pub or better yet like a higher MAR setting like an AD12 team, I wouldn't have minded playing with Snow. But I definitely think there was in the RD12 setting, it just didn't seem good at all. And I'm actually surprised Snow still plays and plays so much. And it's possible I just got unlucky here, and that Snow just really didn't get on with like Weirwood. They like I couldn't tell how memey their dislike of each other was. It seemed memey, but it also seemed genuine at times. I remember one scenario specifically where they were playing Wraith King once again, like wanting to be on like these carry-esque offlaners, and we had a fight on the our safe lane T1 tower, and he's like, just get behind me and we win this fight. And so me and Weirwood on the supports position behind him, and he ended up I think it was Wraith King. He ended up dying twice, and we lost the fight. And he immediately flipped out afterwards, like, you guys should have just been behind me, and like, why the fuck wasn't Styles there? And like, in reality, we were behind him. They had wrapped around on us, and I think killed Weirwood behind him, like, without him noticing. And Styles had shown up, gotten low, and then TP'd back to base for safety. And he had somehow not noticed she was in the fight completely. Playing Quap, I think, and was then complaining about it. And it's like, the fuck are you talking about, man? You're just like complaining about shit that didn't even happen. And yeah, I don't know. I'm really rambling on this one, but yeah, God, it was just like I just a really awful attitude for RD2L. Even though they're like an okay player and probably would have been fine in other environments, but I'd never want to play RD2L with Snow. I am pretty sure I got a little unlucky, but yeah, that's that. Um, whiny bitch is really kind of what it comes down to, unfortunately. Which, speaking of, let's get into my E2 team. Because this was like the E2 team was really interesting. I got really upset when Zama drafted me, which was shitty of me. I was like, oh god, I need to abandon. I've been picked by Zamo, and then he told me like, oh, you've just been around. And I thought it'd be fun to play with you, and I felt really bad about being such a bitch about getting picked by him and talking shit behind his back. But I did the same when For the Swarm picked me in the previous seasons. So what can you do? I'm a baby with that, I guess. But anyway, I got picked by Zamo, who's a bit of a character, and then he picked Nos, who I didn't know anything about. Then he picked Bob Ross, who I only really knew from Discord and seemed like a cheerful fellow. And then he picked New Couch Day, and New Couch Day should actually be orange, because I have played with New Couch Day before this. And yeah, so Zamo he doesn't really play anymore, but he was kind of memed on at the time because he was a pretty opinionated guy, and I think that's why I was like so negative reacted to him picking me, especially because he paid a lot of money for me. We argued like all the time back in the olden days in like RD12 main suggestions. So I thought he had a bit of a negative opinion of me. I definitely had a bit of a negative opinion of him going into this. And I will say, throughout this team, he definitely did live up to the expectation of being incredibly stubborn about things. I think one really annoying characteristic of his was if we lost on a hero. Like I remember we picked Nos Ricky and we lost. I think it was Ricky, or was it Terrorblade? Maybe it was both. And after that, whenever that hero be suggested, I'm like, oh no, we cannot do that. You're so it's like fucking European accent or whatever. Like, oh, it's so bad. We cannot pick that. And that was really frustrating because it felt like there was just no nuance. He like in at least one of those games, I think it was the Ricky games. Like Nos was playing really well, but we lost, and Samo like didn't like the way he was playing, and he was just very blunt with saying like, no, we're never picking this hero again. I think you're bad at it. Even though and his opinions just didn't seem to line up with the reality. I wasn't alone there. I know Nos felt the same way, and I think Bob Ross did too. So that was just weird. Just very weird and stubborn. But overall, I actually was pleasantly surprised with Zamo. I think as a captain goes, he was pretty solid. I think a captain should have like strong opinions on things. I think being wishy, like you don't want to be overly iron fisted or stubborn like Zamo was, but I would prefer a little bit of stubbornness over being wishy washy. Because if you're wishy washy, you just never have drafts that make sense, and you don't make good calls or anything like that. And he didn't have that. I think he was solid. Um, and so yeah, I honestly thought Zamo. I think Zamo once again one of these like Brink style. A lot of mids are ending up in B tier. I'm noticing. Kind of like Brinks, where I think he had his drawbacks, but he also, I think, was pretty good as like a shot caller and a mid. He had a weird hero pool though, and a lot of our heroes overlapped. He liked Klunka and Slardar, and I like Klunka and Slardar for offlane, which I was playing on this team. I should specify that. If my role changes a lot. Um, and yeah, so hero pool is a little bit weird, and this team was like the highest MR team of the season. A lot of people predicted us to do well. And at the beginning of the season, we were doing really well because we were first picking these like starters and Kunkas as a flex picks, and we are doing really well. And then the season soured halfway through. There was a patch, and we didn't adapt to the patch very well. And personalities began butting heads really hard as we began losing more and more games. And I guess that brings us on to Nos, who's our next guy. Nos was the P1. I did actually know Nos a little bit, or know of Nos a little bit before this team, because he was in East Sunday, and I think he was a little bit of a problem in East Sun, just with being, I don't know, a bit of a pain in the ass for adminning. Um, I think, yeah. Trying to remember exactly what happened. I don't remember. I want to say he was on the team that forfeited because they were so upset about playing against an FA, like a week 0 FA. This actually was, I think, the season I admined eSun, so I definitely do remember. I think he was on the team that forfeited the grand finals because they didn't want to play against an FA I had assigned like week 0 because they thought it was unfair. And I don't know. Uh, Fine, I guess if you think it was a bad FA, I don't blame you for that. But watching someone forfeit grand finals over that was fucking crazy, especially given it had been assigned like 3 months prior. Um, just some crazy bitch moves. And honestly, I would say kind of like Snow, Nos definitely comes across like a giant bitch pretty much the whole season. Very emo the whole time. When we were winning, it sounded like he was unhappy, and when we were losing, it sounded like he was about to like kill himself. Um, it just I don't know, and that's super fucking mean, and I'm sure part of it is just like some people I guess have the voice equivalent of a resting bitch face, but he was also I think not just the way he talked, but also the words were also very emo. Like whenever we lost, he would just get annoyed over stuff, and it would be like, oh, like during the game, it's like, oh, well, obviously we should have banned that hero or whatever. And it felt like he gave up. He didn't give up like super quickly. I think he did try and win. And at the beginning of the season, when things were going well, I definitely thought he was maybe a bit of a Burr Hobbit. He was around the same rank. I think he knew Burr Hobbit too, and they maybe got on from like an AD12 team or something. But And he would play his heroes and he would carry, but then when we began losing, it was just like, holy shit, he would just. It really felt like he would collapse inside a little and then unleash that on the rest of the team's morale. And he liked certain heroes. He liked Meepo, and I think he had very strong opinions on how the Meepo games should have been going, and they often didn't go that way. I think in part because Meepo was just not a good P1. He would get very frustrated in those games in particular, from what I remember. Um, and that's like not good for morale. Like your P1's insisting on a weird hero, then kind of getting upset that the game doesn't go well because we aren't playing around this odd hero the way they want, and then just kind of getting really annoyed and huffy. Like, um, so yeah, Nos was I was kind of okay with him at the beginning of the season. As the season go on, I went on. I liked him less and less, and because Zamo was super stubborn, and Nos was also pretty opinionated. They would butt heads a lot. Oh, and the other thing was the drafts. That's right, that was the big thing because Zamo would be like, "Okay, what should I pick here?" And Nos would be just like emo, like, well, I think you should maybe pick this. And then Zam would be like, oh, I don't really like that. Why would we pick that? And he's like, And then Nos would reply with like, well, okay, I don't know then. Just pick whatever you want. Pick whatever you want. And he would like refuse to like either argue his case or suggest another hero. He would just like immediately emo out. And that was such a bad combo. Zamo and Nos were just a terrible combo together. And even though I think Zamo was like okay captain, his weaknesses I think were very much put on full display with Nos because Nos did not play into the stubbornness well at all, and that definitely fucked with our drafts a lot. So I think at the time I probably would have said Nos was C tier. I think I liked him a bit more than Snow, because he at least had some positive attributes, namely in that he was like an okay player, and if games were going well, he was actually okay to play with. At this point in time, I might actually say D tier, just because after this season, my RD12 experience went back to normal, and most players were I played with since then were pretty chill. My D tier is going to be empty, but no, honestly, I think I will stick with C tier because he definitely had some positive things about him. Um, and then Bob Ross. Bob Ross was weirdly the final piece of this kind of shit cake of a trio. I think that just was terrible for team morale. I should mention I said almost nothing on this team. I was very quiet the entire season. And I kind of can be like that. I'll talk if there's room to talk, and if I'm like comfortable with the people I'm playing with. But when I'm playing with people where everyone's talking and there's already three super opinionated people going at it, I just shut up. And that was definitely a bad thing for our season two because I needed to be talking more in game in particular. But I just like I just couldn't be asked. I was like so weighed down, and Bob Ross was weirdly part of this. Um, I'd not played with him before this. I just kind of knew of him because he's a bit of a character in E2. And I was definitely a bit surprised. I really, really just liked playing with Bob Ross in some ways, and in other ways, he was very chill and cool. It was a very weird dynamic. Like I kind of would rather never play with him again, but at the same time, like I also had him come and stand in for I think it was our Sunday team or no, it was our Monday team because he was ancient, and I think I had him stand in for 12 bricks once. And so yeah, so I obviously didn't completely hate playing with him, but I also kind of hated playing with him. Um, he was also very opinionated. I think between him and Nos, they would bring up so many bans that Zamo obviously should have banned and was stupid for not banning. There must have been a list of like 20 heroes by the end of the season that you obviously should have been first banning every game. And I found that super irritating as someone that like regularly captains. I think people that are like constantly like, oh, you should have banned this shit are just like the fucking worst to deal with in draft. Because you only get so many bans. You can't just ban a dozen heroes, and it felt like that was the expectation of Bob Ross and Nos combined. He's also very egotistical, which was weird. He was, like I said, he was ancient at the time. I think he had some value. He was a very greedy support, but he could put it to use. Um, and that's part of why I think I had him come as a stand-in once because I knew he was pretty solid. But he like leaned into it really heavily. He would talk about how, wow, we're not only the highest on our team, but we also have me. Imagine if I was at my real MMR, which I just kind of turned me off as well. And like I said, he was also super greedy as a P4, and I was playing P3. I'm also greedy P4, but it's okay when I'm doing it. It's not okay when the person I'm laning with is doing it. And that's I'm like half joking, because it is a really stupid stance to have, but that is also kind of the way it is. You get annoyed when you know you're laning with a guy and they're like fucking taking all the lotuses for themselves or whatever as the support. So I just I don't think Bob Ross is an objectively a bad teammate or a bad player outside of maybe like the annoying draft input and the bit of an ego. But I didn't really get on with him. I didn't really like his greedy style that much. I felt like it made my game really hard. Um, I didn't really like the dad jokes either, which is purely subjective preference. And I think in combination with Nos and Zamo is just a really, really bad combo where you have these three super opinionated people with three very different personalities just fucking going at it constantly. So I would rather not really play with Bob Ross again. I think I put him with Nos and Vuvu, where I don't hate him. I wouldn't be totally against another season, but I would definitely try and avoid it. And lastly, New Couch Day. Holy shit, this is probably going to take forever. I'm still in the first season. New Couch Day I played with before. New Couch Day is a P5. He has a little hero pool of pretty basic supports. He says almost nothing in game. Mechanically, he's quite weak. I think that was the main thing I realized this season in particular. Was that just like casting a stun in time or realizing someone has activated a Shadow Blade and then hitting the dust button. All of these things were very delayed. Um, and I know I'm talking more about. I've mostly been talking about personalities, and now I'm talking about skill. But Newcastle just really doesn't say anything. And I think that the gaps in his skills were they're really hard ones to cover, because you can have like a 3K mid player that you force to play support, and like they're unhappy and they don't know how to play the heroes. But as long as they're clicking buttons well, you can make it work. You can find the heroes they enjoy and that work with your team and kind of make it happen. If a player is just mechanically really weak, it's a little bit more crippling, and I think that's where New Couch Day sat. And for that reason, I actually have to also put him in C tier. Kind of more of a, I'm even going to move him to be next to Vuvu, because that's what he's like here. Did with Zamo. I may actually just avoid using the bottom thing just to make it cleaner. Row. But yeah, he's a fine guy, but I just, especially, given he was like 3K and already kind of at the bottom of the pack, I think there would just be other 3Ks I would rather pick and play with. That maybe either talk a little bit more in a way that isn't annoying. Um, Obviously, I'd rather have New Couch Day over someone that yaps, um, or just someone that was a little bit better. But yeah. Anyway, that's that. Season 31. Let us continue. Season 31 was another winning E2 team for me. I'll talk about the E2 team first. I felt very, I shall say, egotistical perhaps over this Tuesday win, because I think a lot of people thought that the season 30 team I was on was going to be a winning team because it has very high MMR. It had known faces. I just won the previous season, whatever. Um, and so to win a season with a team that people didn't think wasn't going to be great, and then to lose a season with a team that people thought were going to be good, but also I wasn't captaining, and then to come back the next season and win again was like my head was huge, bigger than my body, metaphorically. So yeah, this was quite the season, and I also honestly loved playing with this team. I think this was a really fun group. I think in terms of like the fun factor, it was even better than my season 29 team. I think in terms of like gameplay, it was maybe a little less interesting. I think we were just objectively good, but Drode's Hero Pool was interesting. But yeah, in terms of just vibes, the season 29 team could be a little bit rough at times because Burrow Hobbit would deafen herself while farming, uh, and in losing games that felt really bad. But um, yeah, I liked both the season. I don't really know why I'm talking about 29 again. But I think it's because after winning this, I mentally compared them to 29 a lot. They were another team I just won with. But anyway, I like them both, and I think this one was a lot of fun. So let's go through it. So we got some repeats here, as one might expect when you win with a team. I end up picking them all again. Let's talk about Drodes first. I would have happily picked Drodes again for the price I got him at, but he never went for that low again. I got him for very cheap. And I got him for cheap for the reason you'd expect if you know Drodes. He's a little bit of a character, and he has a very weird hero pool big on to carry IO, big on to carry Pudge, at least at the time. Also was like enjoying Dawn and Axe, I think, at the time. It's probably different now. Monkey King was another one he historically played a lot. Yeah, very interesting guy. I think part of what made his pool and his playstyle work on this team was our other two cores. Passive Farmer could very much fill that kind of carry from mid roll when needed. Eyes and offlaner was still pretty greedy. I did a weird mix of heroes on this team. Well, to talk about season 29 again. On season 29, I played a lot of super greedy ranged heroes. And then on season 30, despite the fact that I just won with those heroes, I was picked pretty much exclusively initiators. Which is fine, that's what an offlane should be playing. But I was weirdly not as good at them. And I think on this one I played a bit more of a mix, where I played initiators when we need them, and I played kind of weirder range shit when we needed that. And that also kind of worked with Dro's hero pool being like all of these melee offlane type heroes, basically. Really tanky big boys want to stand in front. Um, and I don't know if was it a lot of Wind Ranger. I want to say I maybe got a couple games of Wind Ranger, and that was a really good combo. But yeah, Drones is very interesting to play with. I do think the hero pool would have been harder to work with though on other teams. I'll say personality wise, like I think he's pleasant enough to play with, but he can butt heads with people, and there was no one on this team that he was ever gonna butt heads with. This was like a very chill team. But if I had other players, I would be a little more concerned. So I think I'll put Drodes on A tier, where even though I thoroughly enjoyed playing with him this season, when it comes to picking him again, I would definitely be a little more careful. And there's a reason I didn't pick him in the following season either, because he went for a lot more money. Part of the reason I picked him this season, he's very cheap, and I think that worked very well because I got him for cheap. Oh, I'm talking about him, and my Steam notification pops up playing Satisfactory. There you go. I don't think you see it on the recording, but that's funny. Anyway, yeah, I think the fact I got him for cheap allowed me to kind of cover for his weaknesses, in getting like a strong supporting cast. But yeah, definitely has his ups and downs, just like Zombie Expert, I guess. Has some really strong strengths, maybe a couple holes in his gameplay. But I'd be happy to work around those if I was given the chance to do so again. And let's talk about Katsune next, because they're the only other one I can put up on this board right now. Katsune was my P4. They were ancient at the time. They hit Immortal shortly after, and they've been Immortal ever since, which is a bit of a bummer because I've like never been able to pick them again. And yeah, they were very chill. They actually had the smallest hero pool of anyone on this team. I don't know if they really had a small hero pool or if they had a confidence issue, because Katsune came across as very not confident this entire season. There was a couple of heroes we picked him that he really liked, like the Spirit Breaker. I think was the big one. Oh god, we like I don't think we ever lost to that Spirit Breaker. It was really good and it worked really well with the way we wanted to play. It did feel like he talked himself down a lot though, which he didn't need to do because he was very solid. And just very chill dude. Um, Maybe in Discord he used a bit of Zoomer slang that would lose me sometimes, but yeah, no, Katsune was great. I almost don't even have much to say because they were just very generically chill, and there isn't really like a balance. There was like, oh, this thing they did super well, this thing they did super bad. They were always chill. They were kind of always willing to play whatever I wanted them to play. Although they would almost always tell me it's like, oh, I don't know if I'm good at that because once again, I think a bit of a confidence issue at the time at least. But yeah, the only thing that would put me off playing a Katsune again now is the fact that they've gained so much MMR. I would say at the time they were definitely I like an S tier ancient support. But understandably, now that they've probably hit a more accurate MMR of Immortal, and I think also kind of stopped playing, I would have to put them lower. I think I'm going to kind of do the same thing I did with Vuvu and 12 Bricks, where I'm going to factor in a lot the fact that their MMR has changed. And for me, with a P4, especially one that has chilled on the Dota quite a lot, I think that does lower them to A tier. I don't want to put them below A tier because they were really chill. Um, Whereas I feel like B tier is more of my mixed up and downs. Katsune is just, I think, from a skill level, rusty to the point where I'd be a little hesitant about playing with them again, especially at that mortal cost. But Great fucking guy otherwise. Other half of that support duo was Lagger, who I would play again with very, very quickly. Lagger was super interesting. He was ancient-ish legend. He still is. And on this team, he looked insanely good for his MMR. If you told me he was immortal at the beginning of the season, and then I played the whole season with him without ever checking his badge, I would have never questioned it. He was genuinely insanely good. He was very much a character. He would kind of like crash out sometimes, but in pretty amusing ways. I think there was a game against like a Spectre or something, when Spectre was pretty decent, that kept like chain killing him, and he was just fucking losing it. And it was a little bit scary because I thought he was maybe going to delete his items or something at one point, but it was also very funny. And similarly, when he had like the opposite end, like he had a Pugna game where at 10, 12 minutes he was the richest person on the map. He was on like a beyond godlike spree at 10 minutes, and had also taken like 2 towers, just going absolutely nuts. And he was also pretty funny in that game because he was just popping off. So anyway, yeah, very, very, very fun guy to play with. Very, very good for Zemar, at least on this team. Like I said, I end up picking him again later. I do wonder if there's something about this team that was enabling him, but he was like a great combo with Drodes as well. I think some of Drodes' roughness worked very well with Lagger because Lagger had a similar roughness. Lagger also just didn't take shit, which helped because Drodes, I have heard on other teams, can sometimes be a bit of a dick to his P5s, and kind of put people off. But I think if anything, Lagger was the one putting the leash on Drodes, despite being lower MMR than him. So it just worked crazy well. He worked with his team. I think he was probably the single most important piece of this team. He played crazy well for his MMR. He laned incredibly well with Drodes. He had a nice wide hero pool, which kind of worked with Catsun's small hero pool, at least small hero pool in his head, that we rolled with. I think we'd often pick Catsun's hero earlier than Lagger's because Lagger had more flexibility. I think a lot of time it was like a Drode's Catsun hero pretty early, or maybe one of my heroes pretty early, and then passive Farmer Lagger a little bit later in the draft, from what I remember. Um, and yeah, so it just worked super well with him. I'll hold off till the next season to put him on the board. And passive farmer, also I think very critical part of this team. First of all, he balanced out Drodes pretty well. He also balanced out the cooking. Like I can cook a bit with the drafting. If someone has like a weird idea that I think sounds cool and has potential, I can be a little overly enthusiastic to try it out. Because that's like part of the fun of Dota strategy, is there's a lot of cool shit you can try, especially in RD12 where there's so many different skill sets and hero pools. But passive farmer is a much more collected player, and I think sometimes he would take it too far. Maybe more of an issue in the future season, where I think he would be too afraid to do something bold and just want to pick like a basic meta hero. That didn't necessarily. I don't have any specific examples, which is bad for this, but I think sometimes there'd be like kind of a slightly weirder hero that I thought would be really good for the game, and he would prefer that we would pick a basic meta hero that didn't like strictly make sense in the draft in terms of like synergies and matchups type of way, but was just like a generically strong hero. And I think on this team that balanced out really, really well, where between the two of us, it felt like we always figured the draft out, most of the time anyway. And we could kind of mix the weird cooking and hero pools of Drodes. And mine, I picked some weird ass heroes this season for sure. Without going completely off the rails because I kind of had passive there to keep me in check. And I think it was the same for the in-game shot calling. He actually kind of filled the role that I think the P1 would often fill, and like Burr Hobbit filled in 29, where they would do a lot of the late game shot calling. Because by gods, you didn't really want to have Drodes doing that, or you just end up in the fountain every game. I think. Um, it's that worked really well. He balanced his team super duper well, and he's a really very chill guy to play with as well. Just very calm personality. I think diffuses a lot of situations too. Like if things are getting negative or down, he tends to diffuse it. Except for the one time he flipped out on me, but that's season 34, so we'll talk about that later. Um, because that was very funny. But anyway, the PvP Wednesday team, one of only two teams with like no repeats of any kind. Um, which is interesting. Uh, Monday, I think that just happened because these people play Monday and I don't, or Sunday as well, and I don't play Sunday. Wednesday is probably more because I probably would avoid playing with a lot of these players again. But not because they were bad teammates, and I guess we'll get into it. We'll start with Clueless. I think maybe he is a bit of a bad teammate. Clueless, Immortal Offlaner, Axe Extraordinaire, not much of an extraordinaire. Other heroes, I forgot exactly how the bids went. I had a plan this season. I had a plan to pick Smash P1 and H offlane, and I think this was the start of my mid arc, so I was gonna go mid, and then I don't remember who else I had planned, but there was like a couple of off. I think it was like H and some other offlaner. I really want to play with Smash more than anything, so I think I was gonna, if I couldn't get H for offlane, I was actually gonna pick a different P1 and have Smash offlane maybe. I don't remember exactly, but I had a vague plan going into this, and it all got immediately screwed over because Clueless went up for like 199, and I upped him to 200, and then no one else bid. And it kind of caught me off guard, and it was like one of the earliest bids, and it was a super small PSD1 season. Um, I don't even was this the 8-team season, or is this the beginning of the 4-team seasons? I don't know, but there wasn't. Maybe this was a 4-team. I'm not gonna look it up. But either way, I should have seen it coming, and I shouldn't have bid him up, especially because I really didn't want to win him. But I did it, and now I was stuck with Clueless. And it's, with that mindset going in, it's maybe a little. This is why I usually don't like doing team reviews, because I think it's a bit rude to dunk on someone when you draft them onto your team and give them a worse situation than they maybe could have had with someone else. Especially when it's like kind of by accident. But yeah, Clueless I didn't love playing with, and I think he kind of reinstated my desire not to play with high MMR players. Um, because the way he would be in drafts, I like the best example was playoffs, where was it a 3-game series? I'm trying to remember now. But we had I think the first game he did okay in. Sorry, I gotta 1 second. Sorry. The first game I think he did okay, and then the second game he wanted last. We often gave him last pick because he was our best player, and he wanted Omni Knight. And I told him like Omni Knight, I don't think works here. I think we need a more traditional initiator of some kind. Can you not think of anything else? And he insisted on Omni Knight, and we picked Omni Knight, and we ended up losing. And I think our loss is very inevitable. I think Omni Knight was an awful pick. And then going into the next game, because he's I think a bit of an emotional player, he went like a complete 180. Where instead of having last pick and picking weird shit, he's like, you have to first pick me Centaur. Because if we get to the later picks, there's no good heroes left, and then we lose. And I'm like, this is so fucking stupid. You should have just like not played Omni Knight. But I did what he asked, and I picked him Centaur, and I think they decently countered it. And then we lost, and it's really annoying as someone that I guess captains a lot to have to deal with that. Because it's like it's just completely irrational and stupid. But if I have a high MR player that's opinionated, I tend to just do what they want, because if I make them angry, it's probably just as bad as their bad idea or worse. And so yeah, Clueless was a lot of fun. He's a very exciting player. He did lots of weird shit. He did lots of weird builds and diving, and I think in pubs, Clueless would be an absolute blast. But yeah, I as an RD2L player, it was just having a Highmore player that's that volatile. It's just really not fun. So Clueless does unfortunately go straight to the C tier. Where if I had to play a season again with him, I wouldn't be super upset. Like I said, I think he was funny, but yeah, I just don't think he was a great asset to the team. Piebrain was the other half of our very high MMR offlane duo. A bit of a weird player, played a lot of techies, still does. I see him in ranked every now and then. Very chill guy, also pretty funny, but in a more chill way, whereas Clueless was more of an eccentric funny. Our comms for the early game was pretty much entirely the two of them riffing, which distracted me from the fact that I was losing mid and my safe lane was almost always losing. So I guess that's a positive thing. And yeah, I mean, Piebrain's alright. I think he's like really high MMR now, and I would probably avoid picking him based purely off his MMR. But I guess if he was like going really cheap in auction draft, like certain players do, like I think like Hollywood and InDemon are two people I think of that seem to often go for cheap. Yeah, he was chill. If I had the money for a high MMR support, I'd go for him. I think I put him on B tier. He wasn't like a blowaway support. I don't have like a ton to say about him really. I think for his MMR in an RD12 setting, he doesn't seem crazy impactful, but like he's definitely not bad either. He's just kind of there, and he was pleasant, and I have no complaints. If it wasn't for his MMR, I'd probably have him A tier. Like if he was a divine player that was like that, I think he'd be more comparable to Awful Waffle. But it's a lot of MMR for what you're getting. I think. Moving on, Smash. I unfortunately have very little to say about Smash. It was almost easy to, despite the fact this was the one guy I really wanted to play with, I had almost nothing to say about him all season. Or like I didn't even really notice him there because he would have a hard lane for reasons we'll get into, and then he would have a hard time getting back in the game. And he was like an ancient, mostly offlane player trying to play P1, and I was really bad at mid at this point. And I wasn't just bad at mid, but I played extra bad on Wednesdays. I was playing, I want to say, my first season of We Like Dota 2 at the same, or We Like Dota League at the same time. And my performances in We Like Dota 2 weren't incredible, but they were so much better than on Wednesday night. I don't know exactly what it was. It might just have been that it's like the middle of the week and I wasn't getting in warm up games before or whatever, but my performances on this team were horrific. And, I don't blame Clueless or Smash for being mad at me over it, or blaming me. But yeah, I don't really know what Smash did this season. He didn't get to say much because Pi and Clueless would have been talking the entire time. So he didn't really get to speak, and he didn't really get to do much in the game either because I think it was often lost before he got a chance to play it. And I'm sure there was more. If I did this right after the season ended, I would have more to say. I would remember more. But yeah. At this point in time, I barely remember Smash being on the team. I only really remember he was on this team because I wanted to pick him, and then I felt bad that I picked him because the team was so ass, and I felt like I doomed him to a bad team after saying I wanted to pick him. So I guess just a default B. We'll put him in A tier because I do play with him and talk with him at other times, and I think he's nice. Arc, a random clown. They were someone that I let in because we were really desperate for signups, despite the fact that they were just a little bit below the cap. But I kind of regretted it, to be honest. Um, I read it. They're a nice person. I like them. But they were the kind of I remember thinking this exact thing after this season. It's like this is why we put the floor in. Because when it comes to like knowing what to do in a Dota game and combined with mechanical skill, I think a random clown was just really, really weak. Um, they would often have an insane amount of deaths. They lost every lane. The only hero I really trusted them on was Treant because they could go invis and then cast ulti. On other heroes, even if it was heroes they had a lot of experience on, like Witch Doctor, I would just watch them in fights sometimes when I was already dead because I'd fucked up or something, which I did a lot of, as I previously mentioned. I just kind of watched them casting their spells, and it's just like it was really bad to the point where I wouldn't even really know where to begin, other than just like maybe try mashing your keyboard at the enemy and see if that's better than what you're currently doing. Um, I remember like I think it was their Witch Doctor I was watching. They just weren't throwing coconut. They were just like not using the spell at all. And I think that was the point where it's like, okay, maybe instead of Witch Doctor and Tree, we just pick Tree in for this person. Um, and yeah, and I feel really bad kind of shitting on their gameplay because, as I said, they were perfectly pleasant as a teammate. And if I was playing some other league where having players with the skill was normal, I would have no problem playing with them. But in RD2L, yeah, we let them in when they were below the floor. They were only slightly below the floor, but I think their actual skill level was probably actually quite a lot lower than that. I think even watching LD2L, they were kind of one of the weaker supports in LD2L in the seasons I watched after that. And I think they just really weren't a good fit for RD2L. The skill level was just way too low. So I really do hate to put them in D tier because they're next to people that I like actively really hated playing with. But I would, unless their skill significantly improved, I don't think a random clown. I would want to have a random clown on an RD12 team again in the future. Just because of skill, unfortunately. Okay, moving on. Let's see how many hours we can make this video. EST Tuesday. I tried to make a banger team again, and I was feeling pretty good at first on this one. I remember who was it? It was Beezing who said my team had 5 6Ks or something, or 5 Immortals, and I felt really proud of myself, and I felt really good about it. And I honestly think this team almost had the ability to go all the way. We had a really good group stage, and then in playoffs we kind of just fizzled out, which was a bummer. And I think there were some reasons for that I guess I'll go into. But overall, I didn't, there wasn't any like major issues like with how my this season 30 team fizzled out or imploded, I should say. This one was definitely more of a fizzle than an implosion. So let's start with FTS actually, who I played with before. Um, kind of weird in how they play Dota. They kind of play for a bit and then they stop playing, and they never play like a lot, even when they are playing. But they come and go, and they're surprisingly reliable despite how little they play. They do always have hero pool problems. I think every season I've seen them play or have played with them, there's always hero pool problems because they don't play the game much. Um, and they also, I remember one thing I remember a lot from the season that I don't think I noticed so much in season 29. I think it was. Yeah, season 29 when we won PSD Sun together. Wait, I just realized I've definitely been confusing. Was that season 28? Whatever. Um, yeah, I didn't win with the Burrow Hobbit team and the FTS team in the same season, so I may have gotten something confused at some point, but I'm going to ignore that. Um, maybe it was season 28 with Burrow. Anyway, FTS is, he's chill. I did notice this season that I didn't notice previously was that he is a very safe player. I think I noticed. Well, sorry, I just read a text and then forgot. Um, yeah, it was like when we would go to be aggressive, which I was used to on this this E2 team I just played with and won with. Like I said, we were hyper aggressive. Drone's hero pool is insane. Cats on like Spirit Breaker almost every game. FTS was definitely more like let's sit back and get farm and build up our lead, which is probably, especially, I don't know how it is now. I think at the time that was definitely the more normal, intelligent meta way of playing, but it wasn't really how I played, so I noticed it a lot. But that's not really a downside. That was just kind of something I noticed. Something to talk about. Because there's not really a ton to talk about FTS. They're very stable. The only real downside is the hero pool. I actually wanted to play with them again this season, but they went for a lot. And yeah, chill guy. I like him. I'll make him A tier. And then Lagger, the repeat of Lagger. So this was the season where I questioned if I overestimated Laggers. Like I said, I could have mistaken him for an immortal on the season 31 team. This team, he was definitely a little bit more at his badge, I guess. I was happy to play with him again. I think he was fine, but it made me realize that was maybe something special about season 31. And I think he's probably still an okay player for ZMMR, but he probably wasn't quite as insanely amazing as I thought he was. But he was all right again, and after all that, I still put him, I think, A tier. I think the only reason I wouldn't put him S tier is because I could see him not getting along with certain people. I think that kind of like eccentric, like I kind of talked about on the season 31 team, getting a little bit worked up sometimes, could go badly on certain teams. So yeah, but overall he was fine. Yuumi was the other half of the safe lane. Yuumi was weird. I think Yuumi and Gotchi were probably two halves of why this team like randomly failed. Because Yuumi was pretty solid. Like when Yuumi was on point, Yuumi was really good, and Yuumi had a lot of successful seasons before this, with good reason. But there were some times where he'd show up and he would just like not be playing well, and I don't really know why. And I think this was part of why we just kind of fizzled out in the playoffs randomly. Because we showed up for a season, and Yuumi just like didn't show up. I forget. I really don't remember anything about the series, but I do remember after it thinking like, where the hell is the Yuumi from the rest of the season? And I felt like a lot of the reason we lost was because he just didn't have good performances randomly. And I think it happened a couple other weeks too, and I was never really sure why. So there's just this very weird unreliableness with him, and I don't know where it came from, but yeah, I don't know. What can you do? He was okay. He's also permanently banned now, or like I guess banned indefinitely. Maybe not permanently, but indefinitely. So he's like I don't know. Should I put him where I think he was fine. I'd probably put him like B tier. I think having an unreliable carry is really bad. And so for that reason, I would rank him a lot lower than I would like an unreliable P4 or an unreliable offlane. But he was still okay when he was on it, and I think he was a decent teammate. But do I have to put him in D by like default because he's banned? I think so. Put him with Arc. I guess. I that just makes the most sense to me. Okay, unluck. And GSKW, I hate GSKW. I'm half joking. I really genuinely do not enjoy playing pubs with GSKW very much. I joke about having one in me a month, but it's kind of true. And I don't really enjoy having conversations with GSKW, to be totally honest. I feel like a dick about it because I think it's very petty. But I don't love him. But weirdly, in spite of all that, I actually think he was fine on this team. Um, FTS and Yumi don't talk a ton, so the fact that GSKW is a mega yapper didn't hurt us that much. I think if I had a more talkative P1, P3, or if I had like a P1 that was more confident and shot called the game like I would want a P1 to do, I think Gotchi would have like driven me off a cliff. But I didn't, so the fact that he talked on stop didn't really matter. And I think he is pretty value as a mid. I think maybe the one downside that I think also once again contributed to this like random playoff fizzle out, at least what to me felt like a random fizzle out, was he did overestimate himself. And I want to say one of the games he asked for a sniper. I was like, okay, sure. And it was just really bad. And I think in hindsight, I would have never given a player of his MMR a sniper. But he had a lot of confidence that got to me. And I think honestly, it's definitely like a flaw of his is like overconfidence. And yeah, I think that maybe contributed to our loss a bit. But I was surprised how okay I was with the GSKW season. I think I ended up I didn't really want to pick him, but we got to like the end of the draft, and I'm like, okay, I can pick a shitty 3K support and play mid myself. And I was still at the very beginning of my mid arc, so it wasn't going to be very good. I'm like, or I can pick GSKW and I can play P4 with FTS, and that just was obviously the better option, so I picked him, and it was okay. I would put him B tier. I think he was a lot more manageable on a team than he was in pubs for some reason. And he was okay, despite my petty dislike of him. Um, what can you do? All right. What should we jump to next? Yeah, this was like, oh man, I was looking at this trio again. This was, I was not convinced, I should say, but I was very hopeful that I was going to be able to get 3 out of 5 div wins this season. I've kind of joked about this to some people, but because we don't have intra divs anymore, I think the only way you win RD2L is by winning 3 out of 5 divs. And I thought I could maybe do it this season, and I really wanted to be the first person to do it because ego and all that. And off the E2 team, I was with Drodes, I was definitely having major ego. But yeah, it failed. P Sun lost in grand finals. P Wed won, but I mean that was a 4-team div, so who gives a shit? And E2 fizzled out, and then I think Weirwood. Weirwood is I think the first and only person to have won 3 divs, and they did it without a P Wednesday win, which is impressive because P Wednesday is definitely the easiest one to win when it has no teams, and it's dead now. So I guess that makes it the hardest one to win. But anyway, yeah, let's talk about the P-Wed season first, I guess. Lava was the captain of this one. I decided to be a player. And he picked Fiery Snake and me, and I think that was our 1 and our 2, and Lava played 3. I guess Lava should probably be in blue. I don't really play with him much nowadays. I have known him for a long time, and to be honest, a lot of my opinions are going to be based on him as a stack mate and not him as the captain here. So let's fix that. Yeah, Fire Snake, Big Orange Boy was our support. Only time I ever played with him. And then we started the season with Spyroar, who was like an AD12 player, played a lot of Chen. He played, I want to say, 1 week. And then the next 2 weeks we had Stonk stand in, and then he officially said, I'm out, I can't play anymore, sorry, whatever. And then we had Stonks as a permanent FA. Which was fun. So yeah, let's rank some people. So Stonks, I'm gonna have to type his name because he's on here 2 different times. I'm not even gonna bother waiting until P Wednesday. Stonks is just a player I played a few RD12. Oh, crap. a few RD12 seasons with now. And he's very reliable, and I really like him, and we play together all the time. Even if he does play Mega Devil's Advocate sometimes, but it's okay. He doesn't do that in RD12 teams. And yeah, just very reliable P5 with a good hero pool. I don't think he's like the best laner. I think if I was a P1 laner, or P1 player, I may have a slightly lower opinion of him. But yeah, he's a good friend. He's a good player, and I like him. Fiery Snake. Let's finish off this little story. I think this was like the Justice for Fiery Snake season. There was a lot less teams than the one with Zombie Expert and Doom Cow, so it wasn't exactly the same as winning with him in an equivalent season. But I did feel very justified here, in Fiery Snake being a good carry, because in our finals against what I think was a very overpowered ZQ Droids team, there was definitely a lot of throwing going on from the Droids mind with his Ench core and shit, but like there was still the potential for Zuki to carry the game, solo carry the game. I mean, it was just like there was no players comparable to Zuki this season. There was only 4 teams, and he was looking unstoppable. And I think Fiery really showed up and carried the finals there. I remember having okay games as well. We kind of all needed to have okay games in order to make it work. But Fiery was definitely a huge part of being able to win that grand finals against ZooQ, and I felt extra justified in taking his side against Doomcow. So I like Fiery a lot. I still think the fact he doesn't talk is a problem for P1. You really want your P1 to shock call late game, but I like him a lot. He's fun, and he has a good hero pool, and it's so funny because almost every season, at least 2 or 3 seasons I played with Fiery, maybe the Doomcow one being an exception. Um, he's like so memey in Discord and shit, and then it feels like in game he's actually quite serious, which I like. As I tend to be pretty tryhard, so yeah, cool guy. Um, and then Lava's another guy. I don't play with him a ton nowadays. I don't talk to him a ton nowadays either. I mean, we talked recently about some Pokemon shit, which is cool. I didn't even have a pub with him the other day. Yeah, probably a little bit less of a friend stacker compared to like the Butter, Gregs, and Stonkses, who have been on like a dozen of my teams by now. But definitely still a friend stacker. And I think he's okay. I think Lavas has a weird hole in his gameplay with like mechanical stuff. There's just like always mechanical errors, and I think he gets very frustrated by them, which makes things a little harder. But other than that, I think for like for a 3-4K support, I think he's probably low 4K, mid 4K nowadays. He's okay. I probably would rank him lower than a lot of the other blue names, but that's just because I don't play with him quite as much, so I'm not getting quite as much of the friend stack advantage. Yeah, and then Big Orange Boy, I'm sorry that I do not remember much about Big Orange Boy. I remember finding him slightly annoying, to be honest. I remember he talked a lot, and I wish he spoke less. I think he was one of these players where I would rather have had New Couch Day, after putting New Couch Day kind of low. Yeah, I remember very little. I just remember not liking him very much. That's kind of fucked. But yeah, C tier, I guess. I don't know, maybe you should go B tier because I don't remember enough to be mad at him, but no, you can go New Couch Day. I don't think he should be above New Couch Day. Lastly, P-Sun. This team I was feeling really good about winning. I'm still a little annoyed that what's her face? Yolk was allowed to, or wasn't allowed to, was randomly adjusted by Vuvu and never corrected and beat us in the grand finals, and I'll be salty about this till the day I die. But beyond that, Shadow Ace as a P1 was really great. He's just very reliable. He has a little bit of a hero pool, but a manageable one. It's not like constricting. He does get in his own head a bit, for sure. It's funny, I feel like his entire stack, or not his entire stack, but multiple members of his stack do this, where they like just begin repeating the same thing over and over and over again until like it gets out of their head, I guess. He probably does it the worst with ZooQ at second, where it's just the same fucking line over and over. And I don't know, it's something I've noticed and I think is really funny, just in the way he tilts. But generally speaking, really great teammate, and that's also part of it. Is like there are some weaknesses as a player, as you'd expect from like a player of me. Like, we're like the same MR, I guess. I kind of like high 4K, low 5K. There's always going to be holes in the gameplay. But I think he's pretty good at recognizing what his weaknesses are. He was also really good to talk to. Like, I felt like he was like that player on the team that I could talk to after the games and be like, okay, what do you think happened? What do you think we should do differently next time? Kind of like a first mate kind of thing on the crew. I feel like ideally you kind of always have one of those, and I usually have one of those just by like picking a friend stacker, where like I'll be talking to Greg or Chen after the games or whatever. Sometimes I have multiple of them, like these games with Ancient Old Man. I'm usually talking to both of them at some point. Um, yeah. So definitely, I think I'd put them all the way in S plus tier. I think let's try and keep this semi normal. I think Shadow Ace was a really, really great teammate. I liked him a lot. Avro was a pick. Chase flamed my drafting a little bit because I picked Avro early, but Avro's within Shadow Ace's friend stack. He doesn't really play much because I think he lives in like Ireland or something like that. But he played this season, and he was a lot of fun to play with, and he's a Lomar player, but he's honestly really solid. It's kind of like the opposite of Arc, where I think Avro or not was like they're still like low MMR, and they don't have a ton. I don't think Avro had a ton of games, and maybe didn't have very good game knowledge, but they were very good mechanically. Like I could put them on like Jakiro, for example, and I knew they would just sit at the back and cast spells until they couldn't cast spells anymore. And that's all I really want out of a Lomar player. I think he was very value. I know Lomar players get called value a lot, um, but I think he was very value, and I'm clearly not afraid to call out when someone isn't value. So yeah, I liked Evero a lot. I think you go with 12 Bricks the Sage, um, where it's there's just no real flaws to complain about, especially for his MMR. The only way Avro I think would be a bad pick is if a bunch of people like overly hyped him up and he went for like more than a 3K, more than like a 4K flat support. Otherwise, yeah, I think it's very solid. The Kloost was my offlaner. Has he had a name change since then? I think he may have, but I don't remember what the new name is, so apologies. But anyway, the Kloost was okay. I think in the season he maybe stopped playing Dota for a bit or something. So he was a little bit less impressive than he has been in other seasons. He was fine. He was a bit quiet. I think me and Chase filled a lot of the comms in this team, so the offlane was a bit quiet, and that was okay. I don't think he was amazing, and I don't really have much to say because it wasn't. I think he just. I want to say he maybe had a little bit of a hero pool problem because he wasn't playing Dota at the time. And maybe like consistency wise, it wasn't like the most amazing thing. But he was just fine. It was fine. It was like one of these where I really have nothing to say at all. Almost, it's an A tier. It's funny. I feel some of these A tiers have like very conflicting, where they're really good at one thing and really bad at another, and others are like Kloost, where they're just like they're fine. I wouldn't complain about playing them again. ARGG. I guess I won't rank right now because I play with them again later. But yeah, I found ARG very weird to play with on this team. I had too much money left. Because I bought Avro for cheap, and then I got Chase. And it was pretty late in the draft, so I just needed my offlane duo. And I got Kloost for way, way cheaper than I thought I would. For like, he shouldn't have gone as low as he did. He went for like half of his expected value. So I had like 250 bucks left, and I just put it all on Arg because he was the last guy left. Um, and I spent like at least half the season, if not like the whole group stage, concerned that good guy was like upset about me bidding so much money on him. I was intentionally griefing because he was playing so badly that I thought he was griefing. And in hindsight, now that I've like sorry. Now that I've known him a bit longer and I've watched some of his streams with other teams where he's like playing with friends, I think it's just the way he is. Like, he likes to do goofy shit. He doesn't take RD12 remotely seriously. Um, and he just kind of like will ask and pick random shit that he doesn't actually play and do weird builds and also play it badly, and that's just the way he is, and it wasn't anything personal. But at the time, like me and Shadow Ace would get into calls and be like, okay, does he hate us or is he having fun? It was like every single week we would ask ourselves that question. Does he hate us or is he having fun? Because some of the performances and some of the choices were truly felt like active griefing. I remember there was a Spirit Breaker game. I don't even remember what Sprigga's facets were at the time, but there was a good facet and there was a really bad facet. And he's like, I'm just going to take the other facet. I think it would be fun. And he took the other facet and he fed his ass off. And it was like worse than normal even. And he actually apologized at the end of that game because we lost. And it was just a lot of shit like that. Or like he would ask for like Veto and then just jungle and kind of like fuck Kloost over. And yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of whack shit. And to be honest, um, it's not really my jam. Um, I don't hold it against him now that I've just kind of learned that's how he is, and that's how he enjoys playing Dota, which is totally cool. But it's not really how I enjoy playing Dota, at least not in RD2L. I think in pubs I could occasionally be cool with it. I occasionally do griefy things in pubs. We all do. Um, but yeah, I honestly. Oh, I guess I'm not. I was gonna say I was gonna wait till Emon, but I'm not gonna wait till Emon because this wasn't even a real team. We'll talk about this later. Um, yeah, it's just not really my thing. I guess. Yeah, I think C tier. Chill guy to play with. And I think honestly an okay player, especially if you can get him in the right position. Although I'm not even really sure what that position is. I think in theory he's a P1 player, but the one time he played P1 on this team when Shadows was gone, it wasn't very good. Yeah, but he's just too memey for my personal taste. But yeah, okay. Season 33, Season of the Greg. I have Greg on every team, as you can see. I believe P-Sun and P-Wed I drafted, and E2 Greg drafted for the players. I think for the heroes it was always me. But yeah, where shall we start? We do P-Wed again, I guess. What even happened with this one? I really don't remember this one at all. I guess we'll start with Tuesday because Tuesday was kind of interesting. Tuesday, like I said, Greg drafted this team. And he made a bit of a mistake because he picked Kizu for mid kind of early. And then he, for some reason, thought Wubba was an offlane player, which is true nowadays. But at the time, he was definitely only a mid player. And that caused a bit of a weird thing at the beginning of the season where I said that Kizu should play mid. Or, sorry, Kizu should play offlane. He had more experience playing offlane. He'd played it in a recent season. And Wubba was clearly more of a mid player. And Kizu kind of refused almost. He said, well, he didn't refuse. That's not fair. He said like I'll play offlane, but I won't practice it or be good at it. Or like I refuse to play any offlane pubs. Even he had like recent offlane pubs that week, but I took that as a refusal, and we put Wubba offlane. And that did not work very well because Kizu is a value mid in that he like will perform mechanically better than most players that are like 4K flat. But he's also a very bad mid in that he doesn't really know what he's doing or shot calls at all. And on this team in particular, we really needed that. I want to say I was playing P1 on this team for some reason. Yeah, I was. I was trying to play. Was that because I don't think I was supporting? No, I was definitely playing P1 because I wanted to play P1. Yet again, like I said, this happens every now and then. It's always bad. But so we had Kizu mid. I was playing P1, so I wasn't shot calling, so I was just farming. And Chen is not like a big shot. He'll shot call sometimes, but he's not like, huge on it. I think he shot calls better when he's on offlane. And Kizu was just like always just on his own side of the map farming, seemingly not interested in the game at all. And so that went really badly. So we did a major role switch where we had Wubba go mid, which was way better because he's very active and was a shot caller. But then we put Kizu P4 and had Chen offlane. I think mostly on Chen's request. And that was a little bit weird because Chen's okay at offlane, but he's much more of a P5 now. P4, sorry. And he still had me on P1, which isn't a good thing. And yeah, and Kizu still kind of just did his own thing, and I never really knew what was going on with him. Yeah, this is a funky team. I've got Butter Greg and Chen on here, who I'll just like right away. They're like some of the people I have the most games with, so obviously they're gonna go at the top. This is the reason I've added this S plus tier is just to add the friend stackers and Shadoways. But Kizu was really weird. I'd be okay playing Kazoo again on the right team, but it felt, yeah, I don't know. You like kind of have to put him mid, but then also can't expect him to do any shot calling. I thought was really odd. And I get why certain teams make really good use of him, why people see him as value, but I definitely did not have a great opinion of him this season. And Wubba, I really liked. I thought his mid was really great. I tried to pick him again this season, but failed. The only issue I have with Wubba, the only reason I won't put him at S tier, I guess, is a combination of two things. First of all, he never wanted to play pubs with me. He'd rather play solo queue, which is fine. But I do think anyone who willingly plays solo queue is crazy, and I take that as a mark against you. The other thing is that he was a little bit weird in what heroes he asked for. I think he had a few heroes that I really liked him playing, and then he would want to play shit like Clinks, and I think his Clinks is low key quite bad. I let it through against when I was against him in the previous season, and beat it because it isn't very good. And I picked it for him once this season, and I regretted it. And he even stood in for me once this season on my Sunday team, I think, and he picked himself Clinks, and it looked like dog shit. I don't know. He just like split pushes all game. I just really hate it. And I hold that against him ever so slightly. You know what? But compared to everyone else in this list, I will put him S tier because he is. If I ignore the Clinks and I just tell him I'm not going to pick him Clinks or just hope people ban it, I think he's he's a cool dude. All right, PSD Sunday. Since I just talked about him standing in for me here, this one had Greg. Was it? Wait, yeah. Is this Greg P1 and I was mid? I was doing weird shit with the roles this season, man. I'm pretty sure that's what happened here. Um. I'm like really struggling to remember. I'm like looking up this Wednesday season. There's no way we won, right? No, I think I just like fucked up the ticketing on the final series because it looks like we won our last series, but I'm pretty sure this wasn't actually our last series. I think this was the second to last. Anyway, PC Sunday. Yeah, this season was a really boring team. I get to put Awful Waffle on the list. Oh, I already did. Oh well. Yeah, we had Awful Waffle again, which was fine. We had him play P4, which I thought was gonna be worse than it was, but it was actually okay. Um, he played like Zeus and shit pretty well, Willow pretty well. Yamez was the other support, and that was okay. I think me and Yamez play very different games of Dota, and he's also very very talkative. And I do think that came to clash a couple times. I remember one game where Yamez showed up drunk, and he was really annoying, and I think Greg like snapped at him, which was honestly kind of deserved. And yeah, Yama's nice guy, and I think he plays a decent support. But there's something about the way I can't even really put my finger on it. But we just I think didn't agree on a lot of stuff, like lots of just random little things. Where I'd kind of be shot calling, and then Yama's, who I think is used to doing a lot of shot calling, would kind of question it, and it was just a bit awkward. I think he's okay, but I probably wouldn't rush to be on a team with him again, just because I think we just look at things differently. That's just the way it is. I think a B tier though, it wasn't like the worst thing on earth. And Durzo, I think this was another case. I get Durzo and Kloost mixed up in my head. I think it's because they played both Sunday with me like 2 seasons in a row, and I think they both kind of stopped playing during the season, if I'm remembering correctly. I think it happened with both of them. And so they're like okay for an ancient offlaner, but nothing to write home about. And they really didn't talk at all in the season I played with them. So just kind of like a nothing. Not much to say about Durzo. TBH. Were they the ones that changed the names? I'm giving them Kloost. Is Durzo like an actual name now? I forget what name it is. Like Sanders or something. I don't remember. Anyway, I realize now I may be getting these two confused a bit, but whatever. Go to P Wednesday real quick. Yeah, this was we started off with Vivi, who I thought was a completely different Vivi. That was very awkward. I didn't realize this was a different Vivi until a year later. So I picked this guy thinking like, holy crap, why did this immortal mid player suddenly drop to ancient? And it actually wasn't that guy. But then he left very early, so I didn't realize, and we replaced him with Stonks again, as is tradition. So yeah. And then we had Wildman Beats on, I think, P4. I mean, Timmy the Turtle, P5. No, Wildman Beast ended up being offlane, that's right, because VV was going to offlane, but then when Stonks joined, Stonks took P5 or P4 or whatever, and Wildman Beast played offlane. Oh, that's right, because I thought this was this other VV. I knew he played offlane. Oh, I knew the other VV played offlane. And so I thought this guy played offlane, and this one doesn't play offlane. So it was kind of weird. And Wildman Beats is usually an offlaner, but they wanted to play support, but they ended up playing offlane in the end. So anyway, I remember so little of this team. It's unreal. This team is completely gone from my mind. I think it was only like 7 weeks of games, or maybe 8, because of PWED being shorter. So yeah, I'm sorry. I remember very little. Timmy, I liked quite a lot as Lovemar P5s go. We'll put him in A tier. His hero pool was very solid. It was a little small, but it was very solid. He was just very easy to work with. Like, communicated enough, but didn't like yap or anything, or insist they were like right over issues and argued with higher mark players or whatever. They were a model citizen. Very very pleasant player. I don't think they were like amazing. Like, I wouldn't compare them to Avro. I think Avro was like really good, and that's why he's an S tier. But Timmy was pretty cool. I like Timmy. Wildman Beats, I think, was also pretty chill to play with. I would maybe put them one step lower because their hero pool was kind of fucked. They really liked like Lycan Broodmother, if I recall correctly. And they played like I remember like Centaur quite well as well. But I definitely felt like I would rather have been picking them Zoo Heroes if I get away with it, but it was like kind of hard to get away with. So yeah, I'll put them one below. Yeah, and I'm sorry, I remember so little about the season. I don't remember like any of the games. I remember playing with Timmy quite well because we laned together. That's right, because I was P1. I was P1 in the stack, and I had Greg go mid, I think, because I was just looking at the games on my phone. So I laned with Timmy, and that's why I remember him. But yeah. I don't really remember playing with Wildman Beast much. Probably because I was like AFK farming while he was doing stuff. But I remember him being okay. You know what? I'll move him up to A tier, actually. I think he was pretty chill. Well, I said have Durzo in here, and no, I remember Wildman Beast talking more than Durzo. Durzo's kind of down here because he was a mute. Okay, season 34. Moving swiftly on. Where do we start? Okay, let's start with the E1 teams. This wasn't even a real team. I only put it on here because it is under my teams on the site, but I only played, 3 weeks with this team. I FA'd pretty late because their captain crashed out and abandoned them. And we played, I think 3 seasons of group, and then it came to, I want to say playoffs, and 2 of them weren't around, and I realized, I forgot what was going on, but I realized I think I maybe really needed to schedule my, We Like Dota game on Monday, and because 2 of them were already needing a stand-in, I was like, I'm just gonna do it. Sorry, guys. And so we didn't even play our playoff game, I want to say. But yeah, his team was a horrific disaster. They were like 0-12, I think, when I joined. They were the highest MMR team. It was like all Divine players or Immortals, but they were like all kind of bad. I already talked about how I think Arg's a bit of a memer. And I didn't get to know any of them super well, but I think Surf's Up and Pingu were both Divine supports who were just, seemed really, really bad. Oh no, maybe Gremlin. Was Pingu... Pingu was playing P1? I think Pingu was the one who, like, accidentally... Yeah, Pingu, they did this stupid strat. And, like, I don't know, it was Gremlin's idea. I think Gremlin was the most likable of the 3. Gremlin had this weird strat they wanted to do that involved, like, Nature's Prophet and Treant and buying a bunch of rapiers for spamming globals on repeat, and it was really funny, and it almost worked. But like Pingu and Surf's Up couldn't comprehend it. It was like, I feel like it had to be explained multiple times, and they eventually fucked it up by like accidentally walking out on Prophet and feeding all the rapiers because they were trying to micro Treants when their Treants didn't even do anything because their inventory was like 4 rapiers and it was like an hour into the game. Like, why are you microing the Treants at all? I want to say is what happened. Anyway, I thought they were both incredibly bad. You know what? Based off my brief experience with them, I would actually put both these players in D tier. I think they were really not good, and I understand why this team had no wins. And I think Gremlin was slightly better. Yeah, and yeah, it's not a very fair rating because I barely played with them. They're already 0-12 when I joined, but yeah, it was pretty awful. It felt unwinnable. Like I was going mid. I went mid against Nico, like 12k player, 11k player, 10k player, 9k if you really don't believe their MMR is legit. Um, I remember doing okay against him in lane, like not because I'm good, but because I had a favorable matchup, and it just didn't matter. Like their support duo of an Ancient and Archon were just miles better than my double Divine or Divine plus Immortal support combo. It was mind blowing. Um, how bad the players on this team were. One of the games, Nico was playing Invoker, and he must have racked up like 12 Sunstrike kills while just ignoring me. I think he actually played Invoker both games. But yeah, anyway, super irritating. The most like lost cause team I've ever played on. Moving on. We'll talk about E2 again real quick. I had Chen, who I've already said. I didn't really even talk about Chen at all on E2. I just kind of put him on S plus tier. But Chen is more of a P4 player now, and on this team, he played P3 again. So I think, yeah, he's played a lot of P3 with me recently, which is unfortunate because he's not as good at it anymore, and I don't think he enjoys it as much anymore. Um, but yeah, this team was kind of weird. I spent way too much money on Chen, and I spent too much money on Passive Farmer, and then I spent all my remaining money on Scrub and Rualamo. And our MMR was kind of low, even though Scrub went for a bit less than he should have on paper. But I knew Scrub and Rolamo played together, so I was hopeful there. And then obviously me, Shen, and Scrub had played together, and I'd played with Passive Farmer before. And Shen actually stood in for a couple games on that winning team on E-Tuesday because Drodes almost left the team. Drodes thought he was going to have to leave because of military stuff. And so Chen stood in, or FA'd officially for a couple weeks. And then I forgot what happened. There's some like weird shit with like I don't really know military stuff, some armory mishap, and Drodes got sent back home, so he came back. So Passive Farmer also knew Chen. The whole team liked Chen. We were joking. We were talking at one point. It's like, can we just keep Chen? Can we just have a 6-man team? Because I like them all. But anyway, this team was me trying to relive that old magic and it just going to total shit. Like I said, Chen played off lane. I'll talk about Chen more on P-Wet, I guess. And it was like, okay. I think this season in particular is where I was like fully realizing it's like, yeah, he's really a P4 player now. He's just so much better at P4. Played with Scrub on this team. I played with Scrub before. I've grown apart from Scrub quite a bit. He's okay to play with an RD12 still, though. I'd probably put him in C tier because I just like being forced to interact with him again, but he's an okay teammate. He's definitely a little bit weird. He plays like a weird game. He's like very insistent on things in a very annoying way. He's like that with everything. But Dota is included. He'll just talk complete nonsense and then act like you're an idiot if you don't agree with him. But it's not the end of the world. You can kind of ignore him. Rualamo was an interesting player. Oh, that's right. I didn't even play core on this team initially. I picked Rualamo thinking they were a support, and I was gonna play. I wanted to play mid and put Passive Farmer P1, which in hindsight he would have never allowed me to do. Because I was kind of far into my mid arc at this point, and I wanted to do that. I think that I was also thinking maybe I'd play P1 and put Passive Farmer mid, but then Rualama said they were 1-2 player, and could they play 1-2? And I was like, oh, and they were gonna play 1-2 if their friend picked them, but I outbid them. It's like, oh, I don't mind playing support. I just assumed you were a support player. My bad. And then after that, after saying they could play mid, as I had planned to put passive P1, whether he knew it or not. I then looked at their Dota buff and realized they weren't really a mid player. Rualamo, that is. They were a support player that's very recently become a mid player. And yeah, man, the Rualamo experience was very interesting. I think in some ways his mid was a lot better than he gave it credit for. Like, I think he came out of lanes okay a lot. But then he would like focus on them. He'd get really annoyed that he wasn't winning the lane well enough. And then for the mid game he'd be like absolute dog shit. He would have no impact at all. He would have like a third of the second lowest kill participation on the team. Like basically didn't show up to anything. And then would say, "Oh, if only I had more farm or something." It was really, really irritating, actually. I think he got a lot of advice from Kitty, who I don't think has the best Dota opinions all the time. And I did call him out on this at some point, and then it's like, hey, you're laning fine. I don't expect you to win lanes. So stop complaining about, like, stop thinking about and caring about your lane and try and actually have impact in the game. And I think he did get better after that, to give him credit. And I think he did take it to heart. But then there was a patch, and because he's very new to mid, a lot of his heroes got dunked on. And I was getting a little. So I was talking with Scrub and Shen after games, and Scrub, I think in particular, was kind of annoyed at Rualamo's performance. And it's like, why don't we just have a real mid player? And with the anyway, there's a number of things that happened with the patch, and I at this point was disagreeing with Passive Farmer on a lot of stuff, especially P1 heroes. And so we decided I would go P1. We put Passive mid. We put Rue back on support, and I don't think Rue loved that. He at least felt a little passive aggressive about it. And yeah, I left the season with a very weird thinking of Rue. I think Rue has a lot of opinions and is maybe like low key a bit opinionated, but kind of hides them under a layer of sarcasm. Because 3Ks aren't allowed to have opinions, and I would put him low if he had opinions, so he's got to hide it. That's kind of how it felt. Maybe that's totally unfair, but that's how it felt. And I'll be honest, I love Rualamo, but I would be very happy to never play on a RD12 team with him again. Yeah, yeah. I I didn't really know what he was feeling. It felt like I couldn't tell if it was fun, passive aggressive ribbing, or if it was just. It felt like in reality it was hiding some feelings of something where he was disagreeing with shit. I don't know. It's very hard to explain my feelings and experiences with Rualamo. But I think I don't hate him. I don't hate any of the people in the C tier here. But I think if I could, I would pick a different player in the future. Moving on, Passive Farmer. Let's wrap this up. Because I said I was going to talk about him more here. I said on E231 he balanced me out really well. I think on 34 we clashed a lot more, where we really disagreed over heroes. But part of the issue was there was a patch, and we really disagreed on which heroes were good. The other issue was, I think, the whole safe versus cooking thing. Instead of balancing out, was just us butting heads a lot. And it was a bit rough. And I think I wanted to go mid and have him be P1. So I thought he wanted to be P1, and he didn't like that, and I ended up being P1. And it was just very awkward, and it was a bummer, because I thought we were, like, going to be an unstoppable duo, and we just kind of butt heads a lot. But I do still like him a ton. And I think the main issue here was, well, A, I spent way too much money on him on Shen, and that was my bad. And B, I kind of just let the roles be fucked. I think if we had Rue support from the beginning, we maybe could have done better, or if we just stuck through the patch and had Rue remain mid, even then I think would have been better. I think the thing where we swapped up was a little whack. I haven't mentioned that I was also not playing well on P5. Part of the reason we moved Rue, that I almost forgot about, but was very real, is that I was not doing good on P5. I hadn't actually played support for a long time. I guess I had this E2 season on P4. I think that was it. I've been playing core for a long time now, and I was fucking up Passive's lane. Like, we had a few good lanes. Like, if the lanes went well, they went really well, because we were, like, two divine players. I guess he was immortal. We were two high mark players in the lane, and they would go really well. But if they didn't go really well, because I was fucking up, they really went really badly. And then we had all this MR in one lane that was just going to shit, and I was, like, feeding. And there were a couple of those. And there was one game where I started draft without him, which really annoyed him. I picked him a hero early that he didn't want in Lifestealer, and then I fed in the lane. And he, it was the one time I think I've seen him lose his shit. And it was pretty funny, because it was still kind of calm. We tried to FF out at one point, and he's like, no, you've made me suffer this long to, farm my Radiance on Lifestealer. I'm at least going to enjoy the game now. Like, okay, we can play. But anyway, yeah, we also had to role swap because I was fucking up Passive's lane, and it was genuinely better to have Rue in it. So I think if we had Rue P5 at the beginning of the game, or the beginning of the season, sorry, and we just got used to me playing P1, and Passive playing mid, and we worked around that for a full season, we would have done better. But I screwed a lot of things up with the draft and the roles. And I think even if we just stuck with what we had and kept Rune mid and just had him learn new heroes for the new patch, maybe that would have gone better too. And I just like I don't know, somehow got better at P5. But yeah, this unfortunate team that I think did a lot worse than it could have done. But I still think Passive Farmer is a really good player and a really fun player to play with. And I think we do still make a good team on paper, a good duo. Anyway, PWED, the last one. This was a fantastic team. I really enjoyed this one. This was Shen on P4, which is what he's best at, and he was incredible at it this season. We really like fully utilized it. It makes these other two seasons where we had to play P3 look so sad in comparison. Because he really got to pop off with some of his weird heroes and his Rubik. We had H at the off lane. I played with H forever. He's like one of the first people I like met in RD2L. At least, and he's definitely one of the first people I met that I still play with. And so him and Chen in the off lane, they did I think lose more lanes than they should have. I definitely feel like they didn't lose like a lot of lanes or anything. It just felt like they sometimes had a hard time or like broke even when they shouldn't have. But other than that, they're like they kind of owned. And then I had Old Man on my team for the first time. Him and H were also on a team in PSD Sunday. And Old Man's really great to play with. He's just a very consistent carry, like you divine carries, not amazing but very consistent. A lot like Shadow Ace in some ways, to be honest. Yeah, and there's a reason I keep picking him over and over again, I guess, or at least 2 seasons in a row. And he's just he's a very chill guy, very fun to play with. I think him and H got along really well too, which helps. Yeah. He's got the Morphling. It's like a nice mix, right? There's like it's a wide enough hero pool that you don't have to be worried about being banned out. But at the same time, if you get one of his like good heroes like the Morphling, it feels really good. So Old Man and H. And H is a long time stack mate. I do think H has the maybe one downside of getting like a little emo about Dota partway through the season, where he kind of wants to stop playing it. And that can sometimes feel bad as someone that just kind of enjoys Dota as a hobby. Chen actually does the same thing. I should mention, not so much the last couple seasons, but maybe in other on other teams I played with him, where we get like to playoffs. It's like I'm excited because it's like okay, finally playoffs, the elimination part of the season. And he's like, all right, let's lose on purpose so we can quit. It's like, man, that sucks. But whatever. They're my friends. Love them both. The last person on the team is Hodor, Rise Hodor. This was Buck's friend. And they were what, Crusader? They were let in despite being lower, just because P Wednesday has an issue with getting players all the time. And they sort of balanced out Chen's MMR, I guess. And they were very quiet, so I didn't really get to know them very well. But they were very solid. Like I have no complaints. I don't think they were amazing. I think him and Old Man lost quite a few lanes just because they're a low MMR player without a lot of games. And that's how it goes. But I think his mid game was like totally fine. It was totally acceptable. They were like mechanically okay. I probably wouldn't like rush to have a Crusader on my team in RD2L again because there's a floor, and other teams will not have Crusaders like you do. But honestly, they were fine. I thought they were all right. Yeah, like I said, they didn't speak much. They spoke more towards the end. But yeah, they were fine. I put them in a solid B. Yeah. If you're getting like another high mark support like Chen, or if I got like another Catsun season with the Immortal Catsun, I'd be happy to have Hodor again to balance them out. And I'm actually gonna straighten to my P Sun team, season 35, because this is basically the same team with different supports, where I have me mid, H offlane, Old Man P1. I'd say it's a good combo here, and we've done it again this season somehow. At first I was a little iffy on this team because although Woe is quite a bit better than Hodor, Mappo is obviously quite a lot worse than Shen. And I think this season was a bit higher MMR than that PWED season. And this team was like basically the same but slightly lower, maybe. And then on top of that, instead of this like crappy 14 PWED situation. We had like a real season with P Sun, so like I wasn't really sure how well we were gonna do, but I was pretty hopeful. Obviously we ended up winning, which is very exciting. H and Old Man, not much more to say. H has his hero pool. We played a lot of Darkseer this season, which was worked really well with Mappos. That was like a good combo. I think it was the previous season that H really got into Darkseer. At least it seemed to me that that's the season he really got into Darkseer. I think he has played in the past too, but got like really into it season 34. That was a really good combo with Mappo. And I think honestly a lot of this team's success was just enabling Mappo. Because Mappo is a very weird player. They're not very high MMR. They're like flat 4K or whatever. So you're not like expecting them to carry the game, but they also are kind of weird and greedy, where they would abandon H and lane a lot to go kill couriers, and they would buy a Midas, and they would sometimes buy weird items with the Midas money. They also really loved Orchid. Mappo loved his Orchid, which he would sometimes get really cool solo kills with, and other times it's like, why the hell do you have an Orchid? It's not going to do anything right now. They like already have dispels. But anyway, very funny player, but I honestly think just kind of letting him do his thing and letting H play like the old suicide lane that he claims he likes, where he's like 1v2, really worked really well. And that was really good. And then Old Man's very reliable carry, and we had Woe doing his thing, and I think I wasn't the worst mid. And yeah, it was a really fun team. It was really fun to have like the same tricore and kind of put it to the test in like a real season, I guess. So that was pretty cool. But for Woe and Old, so yeah, I guess I played with Woe a season like ages ago. I don't even remember what season this is highlighted for, but I did play with him at some other time in the past. What was the P5 is fine. He's not like my favorite P5 in the world, to be honest. I think like there's the Stonks or whatever that I do prefer to play with, but he's okay. I think the one weird thing with Woe, that's right. I was trying to like think of what I was thinking here, but the one weird thing with Woe is that he plays a lot of save heroes, but in my opinion, he's better than not save heroes. Like I would rather pick him this season at least. I was preferring to pick him Lich and Jakiro over like Dazzles and Oracles because I felt like his positioning was a bit of a weakness, and on the save heroes it just didn't work. Whereas on like the Lich and Jakiros it was fine. It worked quite well. That's like the one weird thing I guess was like making that work, and like I guess kind of disagreeing with what a player thinks they're good at is always very awkward. It's awkward on the receiving end, sure, too. I'm sure. Be like, okay, you're playing these heroes instead. I don't think anyone really likes that, so that's a little awkward. But you know, they're still pretty cool. A tier for sure. No bias because we won. And then Mappo, like I said, very odd player. I think Mappo actually has to go a little bit lower, just because you need to make him work. I think if you really want to get the most out of Mappo, you need an offlaner that's okay with Mappo's interesting support style, where he plays a lot of melee heroes. Um, he does lots of greedy shit, and I think it honestly works really well in RD2L. But you do need a player that kind of enables him. So yeah, you know, it's a little bit harder to pick Mappo. I think I don't think he's like a plug and play kind of player. And it's weird to like be building a team around a 3K player as well. But yeah, or 4K player. I mean, yeah, solid. And then P Wednesday. This team was super frustrating. I guess it's been long enough now that I don't really care, but at the time I was definitely very frustrated. I picked Sea Captain was a new very high MR player that I picked. And then I wanted to use my remaining money on a decent P1, but there were a lot of P1s, so I delayed my P1 pick, and I picked Zoompa and Tidcup, who I think we're a pretty good support duo. And then, sorry, I didn't pick Zoompa and Tidcup. I picked Tidcup, and then I was gonna save my money for a P1, but SD Chargers went up, and he was going really cheap for a Divine 5 player. It's like, I can't let this pass up, so I bid for him, and then I didn't have enough money to get Very Old Man, who I intended to pick. So I ended up, and Buttery Greg, who was like my backup P1, had been put up first round by Doomcow for some bizarre reason, and so now my backup was gone. I think in my head it was like there was 6 teams, and there was 8 P1s, and like or 9 if you include Newbie Cakes. And so Very Old Man was like the 7th lowest MMR, so I thought I could probably get him. And Buttergreg was the 8th lowest MMR. I'm like, well, I'll definitely get him if there's no one left. And they were both gone. I ended up getting Newbie Cakes again. And then after that, I found out SD Chargers had been boosted. So it wasn't even worth spending the money on him in the first place, which was really, really irritating. And on top of that, it's like, there's a fucking boosted player on my team. And I like told Doomcow, like, I don't want to play with a boosted player, man. If I can find a stand-in. And like I don't know, it's kind of weird. He like didn't want to ban him right away for some reason, even though I feel like it should be a really obvious ban. I think he was concerned with actually being able to find a stand-in, so I convinced Zupa to join, and Chargers got banned for cheating, I guess, or whatever you want to call it. Cheating in pubs, I don't misrepresenting MMR, I don't know the exact. I think just having someone play on your account is not allowed. Getting boosted, but whatever. So then we got Zupa instead, and this season was really frustrating because Newbie Cakes missed a bunch of games early on. Some of them were understandable, like he just wasn't able to play week 0, and then he had, I think, some IRL thing or like a power outage, and he wasn't able to play one week. I think his computer was fucking up, and those were understandable. But then after that, he got like stuck in a pub, and he didn't want to abandon the pub, even though he'd already missed half the games, and that really frustrated me. Oh, and then he slept in one day. I think that was the week right before that. It's like, how are you not abandoning a pub when you already like fucked us over by sleeping through the games the week before? I got really, really frustrated at it, and I think to make it worse, Zoompa also had to miss a few games because like that's why he didn't sign up for Wednesday in the first place, is he knew he was gonna have to miss a few games. And I felt like Newbie Cakes was kind of a dick to the stand-ins. Like Newbie Cakes is a fucking kind of mediocre 3K core player. And I was having these like divine stand-ins come in, like Kavoth, and Newbie Cakes was like complaining they weren't playing the game right. And I was absolutely like fuming on the inside during these games. And it kind of sucks because this really, really lowered my opinion of Newbie Cakes. I think by the end of the season, I was a little more mellowed out. Um, at the beginning, it just felt like he was nothing but a pain in the ass. But by the end of the season, he was having some good games. We were having like Zoompa didn't have to miss any more, and they were kind of getting along well enough, I think. And we were actually playing as a team, which was cool. But at the beginning of the season, it was like there were so many stand-ins, and I feel like Newbie was a little inappropriate with his behavior. But yeah, I mean, so let's stop talking about the season as a whole. I guess that's my sense on Newbie Cakes. I would say before, if it was just this P-Sun season, I'd put him at B tier because I still think a little Mark Carey's a little weak. But after this season, I definitely lost some. I don't know. Respect is the wrong word. My desire to play with him again has gone down. I think he was, like I said, he was fine by the end of the season. I was a little more chilled out by the end of the season. But I think it was a lot of dumb shit in the middle, like not abandoning your pub, and holding everyone up, and then us having to get a stand-in is really stupid, and I think pretty rude. And I think being an opinionated 3K player that like shits on stand-ins of all people. Like if you want to argue with the player, you have to play with the whole season, so you guys can like figure shit out. That's understandable. But like, why are you flaming the stand-in? That's like probably a better player than you'll ever be. Um, I mean, that's a really harsh way to put it, but that's how it felt at the time. Still not D tier or anything. I still think he has redeemable qualities, but yeah, a little rough on that one. And then we had the other players. Sea Captain. Sea Captain was like almost 9K, but they were and they were chill to play with. They were very chill. They, I think, a couple times mentioned like very calmly at the end of the game, like, "Yeah, I was a little tilted over this. Maybe we should work on this." And it's like, yeah, no, just very respectful, very cool. I like Sea Captain a lot. I do still kind of dislike putting all my eggs in one big MMR player. I just never like playing like that. I prefer the 4K brain meld, as people call it. Um, and so for that, I won't put Sea Captain super high. But honestly, of all the super high players I've ever played with, he's probably one of my favorite. He was very chill. He was, in terms of like actual Dota, not Dota skill, but specifically like RD12 specific Dota skill, he was very hit or miss. But like there were some games where he'd carry, and other games where it's like, oh god, it's 20 minutes. He's asked for Allflame Abaddon, and he's still not finished the Radiance or whatever. But I don't know. Maybe if it wasn't his first season, he would be a little more confident to shock call and have us play in a way that, you know, made him more consistent, if that makes sense. Like I don't know how much of those bad games was maybe him playing a way where he expected us to play a certain way and we didn't. Anyway, I liked Sea Captain quite a lot. He was very cool. If it wasn't for the fact he was like 9K, he would maybe even be S tier. But yeah, man, I still don't love having super high more players in our new 12 teams. But then Zoop and Tidcup. Tidcup I think was really really good. I hear that he's a weak laner, but he was laning with Sea Captains, so I guess I didn't really notice it as much. Or I don't really pay attention to people's laning. So from my perspective this season, he was just very very good for ZMMR. He forced Tinker bans because Tinker was so annoying. He had a couple other heroes, Willow in particular, that he was very good at. I don't know if he had a crazy deep pool, but he had a deep enough pool, and I just felt like he was very valuable for his MMR. I'd definitely play Tid Cup again. Um, yeah, yeah. A tier, and then finally Zoopa. I'm playing Zoopa again this season. So I can't say anything mean. No, just kidding. Yeah, Zoopa came in as a stand-in, which was super great. I will say, Zoopa I think is maybe a little bit weak for his MMR. Or whatever his MMR is. I guess I don't even know what his MMR is because I feel like it changes so much season to season. But I was a little surprised. I think I expected Zoopa to be a certain level of skill, and I think he was a bit lower than that. Um, but as expected, he is a very very positive teammate, a very reasonable person to play with. He's a very good hero pool as well, which is a big positive. But yeah, I think he maybe just feeds a little bit. Is really what it comes down to. Um, and with Newbie Cakes, that was maybe a little bit rough because Newbie Cakes is already a bit of a weak player just by MMR, and we had them both in the same lane, and I think that lane just lost a lot. That's something that annoyed Sea Captain, that he like very politely said, "I don't know what to do when our safe lane keeps getting shit on." Um, and so I think there's like Zoopa's one weakness, which is rough for a P5 because it's kind of like the P5's main job is to win the lane. And for that, I'm gonna maybe just slightly demote him to B tier over A tier. But still very cool guy. I think him and Mappo probably have a lot in common in my mind, where I really like playing with them. I think they're very nice people, and I think they're pretty okay Dota players, but they do have some weaknesses that you just have to kind of draft around, um, if you're drafting a team. So anyway, that's everyone. Um, and this video is what, 2 hours, just over 2 hours long. I was scared it might be 3, so I guess I can't complain. But yeah, I don't think I'm gonna say anything else. I've been talking for so long already. I'm seeing some messages build up that I should probably respond to. So, all right, peace.